Hello everyone, welcome back into another stream of Last Protagonist reacting to some videos. So, today is going to be a little bit different because I'll be reacting to one of my videos today, but to give a quick recap of what we checked out yesterday, first we started off with Dekazek's Melina, the failed successor, Elden Ring lore theory, which ironically I'd watched that one before. Then we checked out Paspia's Making Moog Matter, Moog's lore post Elden Ring DLC. Nope, just kidding, we actually had already watched that. So instead we watched Moldy World Building with Curious Archive, the most powerful type of world building. Then A Tragedy's The Erdtree is a Stamen. Then we checked out Illusory Walls video about Miracle Residence, which I forgot to add to the description and stuff, so that's a bit of a mistake on my part. And so for today, like I was saying a moment ago, we have something a bit different. So we're going to start off with the soul of a game's what Bloodborne is actually about. Then we will actually have my silver and gold life and death Elden Ring Fear the Old Lore. So my thought processes of going through this is potentially giving more of my thoughts that went into the making of this video, some more context that I couldn't always include because a lot of things just require a lot of context to set up to begin with, and also to kind of re-examine this in the wake of Shadow of the Erdtree to see if my thoughts still align with what was in this video, which I think it should be pretty good and whatnot. So anyway, before that, just to kill some time, we're going to check out what Bloodborne is actually about by the soul of a game. So obviously my thoughts about Bloodborne are that it's kind of about the life and death struggle. That's kind of inherent in all of the FromSoft games. So that's kind of what I'm expecting this will be about. But if it's something different, then we'll see. So anyway, Asenex, I'm very sorry to hear about your computer and your hard drive. That really sucks if you ever catch this VOD. And then Elden Enthusiast, Platinum Chip, Stella B, welcome back in, everyone. Okay, so let's check it out. It's not playing. So, I mean, I might need to
Bloodborne is a bottomless well of secrets.
fix this. Well of secrets.
Every time I finish replaying the game, I find I've made new connections between various pieces of lore, and it feels like my insight count is growing in real life. Bloodborne is like an onion, and each playthrough signifies peeling off in another layer, revealing a little more that you didn't know the previous time. Or maybe it'll just make you cry. Some of the bosses can be brutal. The first playthrough leaves the player astounded when the game turns from a werewolf horror into a love letter to Lovecraft. Admittedly, that is a great twist that deserves to be the signature thing of Bloodborne. However, there's still more to be unearthed. From Software is no stranger to linguistic nuances. Bloodborne is an adjective. It implies that the disease that the game is centered around is transferred through blood.
Or actually, because it's a title, that makes it a noun.
Similarly to how, for example, the flu is an airborne disease, the beastly scourge is a bloodborne disease. The name of the game promises and delivers gore, which is enough for a player looking to enjoy an action horror game. But the philosophical meaning is rooted deeper than that.
This game is probably even more of a horror game if you are a giant man-eating boar, I assume. But that was definitely a choice to use that footage with that commentary right there.
Blood is at the center of the game. It doesn't only represent the bloodshed and the disease. Bloodborne can be interpreted in many ways, as it objectively just doesn't present itself as a symbol for one thing, but rather for several. One of the ways I like to see it as is as a commentary on substance abuse. Addiction.
I almost thought it said Laver one because of the way that the text got cut off there. Just like the fade. The softness. Layer 1, substance abuse.
Addiction as a whole is a concept that's universally bad, but many people struggle with it anyway. The fact is that it's never something one feeds into with a clear intent. Being addicted is being enslaved. Fighting the urges to relapse ends up setting the stage for a proverbial clash between willpower and instinct. Two polar opposites. One is found strictly in humans, the other one in animals. One marks a milestone of evolution of man, while the other one is its, dare I say, beastly predecessor.
So it's interesting that he brought that up with the dichotomy of the yin yang. I don't know how well that works. So what I mean is he might be right about that, but I don't know enough of the intricacies of some of like the more ancient beliefs about the yin yang in terms of willpower and instinct. So if he's saying willpower, I think he's associating that with rationality, but he had that in the white portion of the yin yang, which doesn't align with what I know about the yin yang and how it might relate to like the concepts of hun and po, which is the Japanese or a Japanese way of looking at the yin yang. And anyway, contrasting willpower to instinct, I think, is very interesting and something I'd want to muse on more, to be honest. So Tanner Posberg, nice to see you again. It's been a minute. I'm doing pretty well. How about you?
In Bloodborne, all the inhabitants of the city of Yharnam and its surroundings imbibe the local miraculous substance, known simply as the healing blood. It doesn't take long for the player to notice, however, that there are drastic side effects to it. It's not like that would stop the Yharnamites from using, they're beyond that point, because their instinct is already winning over their willpower. That's how they eventually lose their humanity and turn into beasts. From Software games are all centered around a few key elements, including the pursuit of finding or retaining one's humanity. In Dark Souls, for example, people are able to hold on to their humanity by having a focused purpose in life. Bloodborne inverts this trope, as loss of humanity is inevitable in this world. The difference is that there are two ways to go about it, by regression to beasthood or by ascension to kin of the cosmos. People turn to beasts for a reason. I believe the message Bloodborne is conveying here is that addiction is a gateway to regression. Some of the results of substance abuse can be violent instincts and rage taking the forefront, while rational thinking takes the back seat.
Right, so I wonder if he's going to talk about what Miyazaki brings up in one of the dev interviews, where he says part of the reason why clerics tend to be the worst things out there is essentially because they are repressing themselves and trying to hang on to their humanity, and thus the harder they cling to it, the more explosive the transformation. And that might tie in pretty well to those ideas of willpower versus instinct, because if you're exerting your willpower to keep your instincts in check, you could say that the willpower might be more related to humanity. And so I'm curious where he's going to talk about the whole regressive aspect with the rest of this.
Using the healing blood of Yharnam leads to exactly that, and it's signified by physiological changes as well, further solidifying the symbolism. A quote from Steppenwolf by Hermann Hesse describes the addiction themes of Bloodborne fittingly. The man of power is ruined by power, the man of money by money, the submissive man.
So it's a little bit annoying how often the gradient is used when it's cutting off the bottom of this. I would have just turned it down a little bit.
By subservience, and the pleasure seeker by pleasure. Indeed, the addicts who seek pleasure in healing blood, or the high-ranking members of the church who gain money and power by distributing the blood, eventually all turn into horrible beasts, a fact that the game presents as an inescapable event for any user of the substance. And yet, for some reason, we, the player, remain human. We retain our clarity of mind as we walk around the city of Yharnam, observing the townsfolk killing and burning their neighbors who have already transformed, while they themselves already show signs of metamorphosis as well. Their skin is covered with fur, the bone structure of their skulls morphs into a more animalistic shape, their nails turn into claws. Wait, let me go back. Metamorphosis.
Layer 2.
That's what the game is about. Change, transformation, evolution and regression. It's present everywhere, not just in people turning into beasts. Abandoning one's humanity and regressing to beasthood stands on one side of the scale. The other side of it is occupied by those aiming to do the opposite. These are scholars looking to evolve past their humanity, to evolve further. They do not succumb to the healing blood addiction, but they do still lose their humanity in a different way. They're addicted to the arcane. To arcane knowledge, rather. So are they on the right path then? If leaving beasthood behind was necessary in order to gain humanity, could it be that losing humanity is just as vital to step up on the ladder of evolution and reach the next stage of it?
I'm sure this will come as no surprise to you guys familiar with my channel, but one of the taglines that I used in a lot of the Bloodborne videos that I produced was that if in order to transcend your humanity, it means you leave your humanity behind, would you do it? I do think that is kind of one of the quintessential questions at play in Bloodborne. And obviously for the Healing Church, or at least Miquella, the answer is unequivocally yes. So, man, nice to see you again. And Scowleasy, welcome back with your damned chocolate Nutella ice cream that you made. It almost tastes like coffee. I could believe that for sure. I'm curious how it tasted, though.
Individual cases of characters of Bloodborne point to the answer yes. Miquella, for instance, seems to thrive in his mad state and weeps when we kill him, as it means that he will
forget everything.
And when we meet Yusefka's imposter near the end of the game, she's in a euphoric state as she has finally managed to conceive a child with a cosmic entity. Conception of a child.
Layer 3.
Motherhood. Let's peel on another layer of the onion. One could say that conception is a central theme of Bloodborne. After all, metamorphosis is creation of something new. Dr. Yusefka's imposter spends her career in pursuit of making contact with a being from a higher plane of existence and becoming a mother of its offspring. Meanwhile, the Lady of the Night, Ariana, gives birth to a child conceived by the very same entity, while this was never her aim. Ironic, considering her profession. The name of a prominent school of Yharnam studying contact with the cosmos is Mensis. This organization is given spotlight within the story only when the moon turns red at the end of the game. Mensis is a Latin word for month, as well as a synonym for menstruation. The symbolism gains even more weight with the knowledge that all the instances of conception in the game take place while a blood moon decorates the night sky of Yharnam. After all, bleeding during menstruation means lack of conception, while shedding blood is an aspect of beasthood, a regressive act standing in direct opposition to the evolution signified in Bloodborne by childbirth. In the end, blood loss brings about change, whatever the context of it is.
Yeah, I'm glad that he brought up the aspect of Mensis being related to moon, and then of course menstruation being related to moons, you know, the 28-day cycle and stuff like that. I tend to be more of the belief that the school of Mensis is trying to chase the moon rather than like menstruation and childbirth specifically, although they did capture Murgo, or whatever you want to call it, kidnapped, I guess. Oh wow, kidnapped. That's an even better pun than I could have even thought, because they steal a child and we're supposed to silence its cry and put it back to sleep, put it back into its nap almost. Anyway, setting that stuff aside, I do think that the School of Mensis is more likely the School of the Moon, and Murgo was just supposed to be a means to an end in achieving their goals. But of course, that's just my interpretation of it. Stella, you like Miquellash's voice? It's funny because it's kind of whiny. It is. It certainly is. And of course, there is that little bit of a discrepancy in the Japanese text where he delivers his final death line as more of a question, which shows that he doesn't know if he'll wake up or die, or like what's happened to his mummified body, which I think is very interesting, as opposed to him being completely oblivious as far as the English text is concerned.
The conclusion is that creating new life through conception is the way forward, while ending a life with a violent act is a step back from human to animal. Conception is sacred in Bloodborne, but similar to how gaining too much insight reveals horrors to the player, perhaps it's also possible that mankind should not ascend. What an ascension brings is incomprehensible and terrifying after all.
So Global Sequence, nice to see you again. You said Morrissey, grant us eyes, grant us eyes. I was looking for some eyes, and then I found some eyes. And heaven knows I'm miserable now.
With the knowledge of all this, let's try to answer the question of why it is that the hunter is somehow unaffected by all this. At the end of the playthrough, the player character's coat is covered with a pink-red crust of dried blood. But none of all the bloodshed and healing blood infusions turned them into a beast. Their eyes see the unseen as they understand the arcane workings of the world better than anyone else, and yet they haven't turned into a kin of the cosmos either. They haven't regressed or advanced on the scale of evolution. They transcended it. But how? Well, I like to believe that the first scene of the game is entirely symbolic. The player character begins the game with an infusion of the healing blood, which is immediately followed by a beast reaching towards us, only to burn by the hand of the messengers. This signifies the power of the moon presence and its servants of the dream protecting us from the beastly scourge, as it has a higher purpose for us. It needs us to help it conceive a child. It's also possible to look at the first cutscene as a hallucination. Perhaps the healing blood merely deteriorates one's brain and causes strong delusions within the user. And that is what turned the streets of the once prosperous city of Yharnam into a parade ground for madness and murder. Joining the fray would only make sense, as we, the player, begin the game by using the very same substance that everyone in Yharnam uses as well, and therefore...
So, Global says, did the messengers burn the beast? You never noticed? It's left ambiguous. It almost seems to spontaneously combust, but obviously immediately after that, the messengers start crawling over our body. So I tend to have a different perspective than many others in regards to that opening cutscene and what the messengers are in relation to the moon presence. So rather than thinking they directly serve the moon presence, I kind of think that they're supposed to be emblematic of the wills of the blood, essentially, and they may or may not be protecting us or guiding us specifically through the night, which may be why we don't turn into beasts or into kin of the cosmos either. But I do think there's a more specific way to become a kin of the cosmos, and I don't think it's just obviously from imbibing blood and whatnot.
Therefore we too aren't immune to bloodlust and visions of monsters. Or...
you may think it all a mere bad dream.
That's the beauty of the game. Almost none of these interpretations are set in stone, because this is your journey. The joy of Bloodborne lies in different people peeling different layers of the onion and taking away different memories and impressions. To someone, the game is an impactful symbolism of motherhood. To someone else, it's just a great action game.
Music's a little bit loud there.
That's the soul of Bloodborne.
Thank you for watching. This world is not worth saving. Ooh, that looks fun. Hold on. Let's look at what else they have. Okay, so that was their second video, produced 4 months ago, so they've only got 4 months. Warframe story is amazing. Love in video games. Can it work? This world is not worth saving. You know what? I think I'll go ahead and subscribe, because I enjoyed that video. I'm curious what the Frenzied Flame one has to say, so I might watch that sometime. So Eric Williams, welcome back in a while. You haven't heard that in a while? That music is absurdly good. Yeah, Garmin's theme is pretty damn good. Definitely one of the top tier Bloodborne tracks for sure. So, okay. Let me go ahead and share the link with you guys in the chat if you want to give the soul of a game some support. So that was pretty good. Very succinct. Actually, I guess it was 10 minutes, but you know, compared to some of my videos, very succinct and a good flow of the pace between the segments and whatnot. So very nice for a new channel. And I enjoy the little crazy looking Elden Ring moon. Can't remember what like the sun dial, moon dial thing is called. Anyway. Hey Hilko and Little Church Lore, welcome back into the stream. How's it going? So yeah, that was fun. All right. So next we are not going to look at overrated. That's funny. We're going to check out something a little bit different for the channel. Obviously, I have looked at one of my videos on April Fool's Day just to give you guys a little bit of that inside scoop of why I created the Frenzied Flame is the best ending April Fool's video to begin with. So truly, it was an April Fool's due to lies by omission. So to borrow a line from Family Guy, from a certain point of view, it was all true, you know? That was a joke? Yes, it was, Hilko. But like I said, it was a very purposeful joke. And if you want all of that inside scoop, you can check my channel history, because we watched that 11 days ago on the lives. Yes, you missed LP give LP tips, but you're about to see some LP tips. Next time, I should like review one of my LPs so you can watch LP give LP tips on an LP while listening to an LP at that. I don't know. Global said, from a sound design perspective, the use of the reverb throughout Bloodborne is to imitate a small, hard, enclosed space is both campy and filled with personality. I mean, that's kind of why one of the many reasons why I enjoy Bloodborne. Like, it's very dialed into what it is. To me, it has one of the strongest identities of not just the Souls games, but of almost like any video game. Okay, so anyway, let's go ahead and check out this video from some guy called Last Protagonist, pretentious, titled Silver and Gold, Life and Death, Elden Ring, Fear the Old Lore. So I wanted to call it Gold and Silver, but I didn't want to get the immediate Pokemon's identification stuck into people's heads. And I think Silver and Gold might flow a little bit better than this anyway. I always feel like I have a bit of difficulty trying to figure out what I want to title my videos and essays. And especially when I have one that's over an hour long, holy crap, then it's very hard to encapsulate that much information into as few words as possible. First antagonist? Well, you see, that's my my second channel's name, apparently. All right, so let's go ahead and dive on in. Welcome to another episode of Fear the Old Lore, where we examine the English and Japanese of games for more insight into their lore. So I can tell that I had my mic a little bit further away, or I didn't have like enough of sound dampeners behind it. So like the wall is giving it a bit of extra acoustics to it. And also I kind of hate how slowly I have to talk for stuff like this. So typically if I watch my videos again after they're released, I'll do it in 2 times speed. So this is going to be extra excruciating for me, guys. In this episode, we'll examine silver and gold as they pertain to the concepts of life and death in the lands between. Spoilers ahead. In one of my previous videos, I made an offhanded comment how the Albinaurics were created by the Nox, but there isn't a ton in the base game to support that. The Albinauric Bloodclot says, Albinaurics are life forms made by human hands, but this doesn't necessarily mean the Nox created them. Instead, this information comes from some cut dialogue for Topes, in which he says,
Oh, one more.
So I was actually really proud of what I did to make this work. I added like a little bit of a background to the bottom of the screen to make it look like the normal Elden Ring dialogue that pops up. And so this effect, I don't remember exactly how I made it, but my goal was to make it look like an aged painting, and I think it turned out pretty damn well. And this I actually just took from a screenshot of dialogue, or well, he actually wasn't speaking at this moment, obviously, from just a close-up of Topes. So this is probably one of my favorite little effects that I've worked on in all of my videos, to be honest. I man, you're confused. Who's whom now? It's a me, not Mario, because that costs too much money.
Beware the Albinaurics, accursed souls born of a forbidden rite of the eternal city. The curse withered the legs of the old and silenced the tongues of the frogs.
So yeah, that actually took me a lot of time to find within the internal files of the sound stuff within Elden Ring. So it took me like at least 3 hours, no joke. So that's like some of the hidden stuff that goes into making videos like this, that you don't really get to appreciate it when you're watching on somebody else's time, essentially. So yeah, this stuff can be pretty time consuming, just the long story short. There's something else I wanted to say about that. Oh yeah. So basically my goal, and I think the goal of pretty much any content creator, whether that be like a small time YouTuber or like an actual full film production company, would be to make things as seamless as possible. And so that way you never really realize that so much work has to go in for like such a little kind of payoff for continuity. Dialogue could have been cut for a reason though, and we don't know for sure whether the Nox are meant to be the creators of the Albinaurics in the retail version of the game. So I think the reason why I used the 1.0 footage right there is because I was so sick already of getting a bunch of Albinauric footage, so this is just what I had handy, because I'd used so much Albinauric footage elsewhere. Nox are meant to be the creator. And also, it's kind of cool to see them using the purple glow with their bows, because it reminds me of the Darkmoon Covenant. Anyway, maybe I should shut up a little bit on the production side of stuff and go more into the lore stuff before we all get distracted by me. Hey, Forgeboards, I've got some weird theories. I know, what is this, dude? Creators of the Albinaurics in the retail version of the game. So in order to justify this claim, we kind of have to work backwards and rely on contextual clues to piece things together. Starting with a conclusion and trying to find supporting evidence for it isn't the best way to build an argument, but I think given what's in the final version of the game, we can still come to the same conclusion. So yeah, this is all just to set up that Albinaurics are related to the Eternal Cities, and it's pretty straightforward, but I just want to, be as methodical as I can about it. And the funny thing is, somebody made a comment to this video about that line right there, about starting with a conclusion and then building support for it. He's like, that's literally what science is. I'm like, no, bro. Science is you have something, and then you try to figure out why it is the way it is. You don't start with a conclusion. You build up into a conclusion or a best description of a model, which, I mean, depending from a certain point of view, it can end up looking the same, but it is fundamentally different. At least it's supposed to be. One major bit of lore about the Albinaurics that's a little lost in translation is that Albinaurics can be understood as silver people, since their name comes from Shirogane-jin in Japanese, with Shirogane meaning silver and jin meaning people. So how did they come to be called Albinaurics? It's a little complicated. Basically, although Shirogane is written with hiragana and means silver, the Chinese characters for it could be broken down into Shiro for white and Kane for metal or gold. The translators may have taken this white gold and translated it into Latin with album being white and aurum being gold to create Albinauric. Generally speaking, I like Albinauric as a localization since it fits the feel of the game rather well, but I do think it's unfortunate it loses connotations of being related to silver as a result. Perhaps Argyrian could have been a better choice to preserve some of that meaning, but that's going a bit beyond the scope of this video. I'll stand by that choice. I think Argyrian would probably be better in the final build of the game. So I do wonder whether or not Albinauric... I talk about it in the video, I'll shut up. Naturally, with George R.R. Martin's contribution to the... Hey guys, I almost cut myself off to make my own point for me. Writing of Elden Ring, it raises the question whether he created the term Albinauric. It's possible, but it seems more likely to me the term originates from Japanese due to the multiple ways Albinaurics are meant to be related to silver, and how unlikely it would be to translate white gold as Shirogane specifically. But I don't want to get too bogged down by the details. And then I had a bunch of funny comments that were like, LP, I turned to you for those details. Why would you leave them out? It's because I didn't have a better way to transition, okay? It's sometimes you got to use some rhetoric to get the point moving. So putting that aside, if we accept that the Albinaurics are silver people, what impact would that have on the lore? While certain things are going to remain ambiguous, I think it helps recontextualize the Nox experiments with silver mimic tears, starlight shards, celestial dew, their Night Maiden's Mist, and why Lieutenant's quest involves delivering a birthing droplet to her Albinauric sister in the apostate derelict. Yeah, so for that part right there, I could definitely tell that I had to space out the audio a bit more to match the footage, which is why there's like such abrupt sound breaks from my dialogue. I don't know if you guys noticed that stuff, but I hyperfixated on it now because, it's my dialogue. Let's start by examining mimic tears. According to their ashes, mimic tears are the result of an attempt by the Eternal City to forge a lord, and their mimicry does not extend to imitating the summoner's will. Silver tear husks elaborate, saying, I don't know why I forgot about the will line there. So if they're silver beings, that would be another indicator that they're distinct from will, and therefore that doesn't align super well with gold, which may or may not tie into the whole soul thing as well. The silver tear makes mockery of life, reborn again and again into imitation. Perhaps one day it will be reborn a lord. It's unclear how the Nox believed copying others would allow them to create a lord, but the inability of mimics to copy their host's will, as well as the Nox experiments in creating puppets, show they ran into issues copying their wills, or that they weren't very concerned about bodily autonomy. Perhaps both. One idea I mentioned in my video about Estelle and the Primeval Current is that the Nox may have experimented with swapping bodies, similar to the way primeval glintstone sorcerers can transfer their souls into new vessels. So Floorboard said, after all is said and done, you've come to the conclusion that everything silver has to do with the Nox. I don't know if I'd go that far because, what's his name? St. Trina's sword is made out of silver as well. So I do imagine there has to be like some breaks between silver and the Nox and whatnot. But I would definitely say that silver is very heavily night-coded as far as Elden Ring goes. Then I thought there was something else I was going to say about this. Oh yeah, I was just distracted by Estelle being called Misbegotten of the Void. Mimic tears could copy the body of the original. It would save the hassle of finding another suitable vessel, and it's possible the Nox may have created the Albinaurics either by swapping their souls into mimic tears, or as an unintended byproduct in the creation of silver tears. But before going too far down that route, I do like how my own silver tier gets murked by the enemy mimic tier. You can see the silver popping off of him. But yeah, so about this theory with the Nox using the mimic tears for body swapping, I honestly don't have super strong feelings about it. I just thought it was a very interesting idea considering how prevalent body swapping or soul swapping seems to be elsewhere. And with Selen looking into the Primeval Current and us not really getting a ton of Primeval Current coded Nox stuff, it made me wonder if the Nox had more of a connection to like the ancient astrologers, which it seems like they should, or if they ever used the primeval glintstone blades and whatnot. And if they did, could they have used that in conjunction with mimic tears? Is that what the Albinaurics are? Or was this just a failed product altogether and did it have nothing to do with body swapping? I probably wouldn't be as big a fan or proponent of this theory if we didn't have excessive amounts of puppets lingering around Rayo Lucaria and Liurnia. So there really does seem to be a really big theme of that in the game, at least to me. So I don't know how about you guys feel about that. Let me know. Hey, Jack Irish, nice to see you again. What do I think of the Dark Souls armor being added to Elden Ring? Well, if it's legitimately going to be tied to Dark Souls, I'm going to hate it. And I will be an unrepentant hater about that. But if it's just callbacks and is supposed to have completely different lore from the Dark Souls stuff, I could appreciate them as kind of just callback references in the same vein that patches may be. So it's a fun question. The silver is a light silver, not a normal silver? Okay. Hey, Methoda, how's it going? The future DLC will mention Grace of Silver and just ruin everything we know? Maybe. I mean, I would be here for it. Like, this is just supposed to be like my best working theory of the dichotomy between gold and silver. And spoiler alert, I don't know crap about silver. So it mostly ended up being about gold and how deep the rabbit hole goes, which I couldn't even include everything. There's like a bunch of stuff relating to Miquella that I wanted to bring up, but I didn't. I should probably pull out my notes. Maybe I'll do that if we have extra time after this video. Intended byproduct in the creation of silver tears. But before going too far down that route, let's first focus on the Albinaurics' connections to silver tears. According to the blue-silver chainmail armor set utilized by female Albinauric archers, it's born from the same metal as the archers themselves, meaning Albinaurics come from a silvery kind of metal. Between the Albinauric shield, silver mirror shield, ripple blade, and ripple crescent halberd, the Albinaurics are also said to come from ripples in a drop of dew, implying the metal they come from is also liquid. This coincides with the way Nox-flowing swords and hammers are forged from the liquid metals of silver tears, and leads me to believe that the Albinaurics, or silver people, are derived from silver tears, and is further reinforced in how the Albinaurics' primordial drop of dew uses the same character as what's used for a silver tear in Japanese. And for what it's worth, I'm trying to remember what other context this comes up in. I think it's also used to describe the droplets of sap. Let me look this up. Oh, the flasks of Crimson Tears and whatnot. So we're going to get a ton of results. So these are just like tears in general. But I mean, the tears are related to the sap. Okay. Oh yeah, and it comes up in like Celestial Dew and all that other stuff. If Albinaurics come from silver tears, it would explain some of the similarities between them. While mimic tears can bleed red after they've transformed, they bleed silver just like Albinaurics do while in droplet form. Tanner asked if I have any plans to play the DLC when it comes out for Lies of P. I'm not sure. I'm going to need to double check the time frame in which it comes out. I enjoyed Lies of P well enough, but I honestly wasn't crazy about it. So I'm probably fine with waiting and seeing if the DLC goes on sale or anything as well. I still need to finish Kazan. I might try to do that tomorrow, to be honest. And then we also heard like what Seed of Nostalgia, like another Souls game, is on super sale right now. I might look into that as well. But I would probably play that one on stream. So Little Church Lore said lumen is Latin for light. Oh, you're talking about lumen flowers in Bloodborne are kind of like silver grace, flowers that point toward the moonlight. So the lumen flower, as far as that's concerned in Bloodborne, is essentially like the equivalent of star sunflower. I've talked about this before on other streams where the characters for sunflower have sun in them, oddly enough, which might sound kind of obvious, at least from an English perspective, but you got to keep in mind that it's kind of rare for there to be such similar cognates between languages. Well, I guess I wouldn't really call these a cognate, but I mean, it's essentially the same word with different pronunciation. So like the meaning is the same. So Nichirinso is sunflower, and then when we look up this part in Bloodborne, oh no, where is my locations? The Lumen Flower Garden is essentially like Star Flower Garden. So rather than it being sunflowers, starflower is what we get. So I don't know where the lumen came from. Maybe because it's a cognate for like light or blood. So I wonder, because you have like lumen in your blood vessels, I guess. I wonder if they were just trying to make a double entendre as far as the translation went, or if things changed throughout the development. Jack's excited for new weapons in Lies of P. Scalisi said there's no hard date. Okay. What is on super sale? Seed of Nostalgia? It's like another Souls game. I don't remember if that's what I call Trippy Souls, or if it's like another Souls-like. And Methoda thought Lumen was supposed to be associated with Lunar. I'm very curious about that myself, to be honest. Oh, you're excited for new weapons in Elden Ring? Oh, yeah, maybe we will get new weapons with those armor sets. But, hey. Hold on. Doggy. He like throws a fit if he can't get himself back under the covers. And then I have to like hold them over him so he could do his little spin move to tuck himself in. All right, he should be settled now. Okay, where was I at? Dang, I didn't realize the sale was that crazy good global. 1,000 classic PC games on a 90% sale? That's pretty good. All right, here we go. Let's go back in. And just like how Albinaurics harbor an innate arcane power they can use to channel sorceries, Silver Tier masks provide the largest arcane stat bonus in the game at 8 points, and the Albinauric mask increases it by 4. And then I included the Black Wolf Mask because that's literally the next one in the menu, and it has no arcane bonus whatsoever, in case anybody was ever confused about that. If Albinaurics do come from silver tiers, it might also help explain why their bodies are unstable and fade away. Here you go, you perverts, with your Miyazaki foot lore. Starting with their legs. It is odd though, even though they lose the ability to speak, second generation Albinaurics seem more stabilized with their ability to walk on their own feet or perform cartwheels. Take the following. I love how goofy they look when they do their cartwheels. It sucks getting hit by one though. With a heavy grain of salt. 91 Arcane, I truly had no shame. So look, the reason why I even had that footage to begin with is because I was trying to farm those damn stupid silver tiers in the frickin' Noxtella place to get the damn gravel stone, which I failed to get after like 2 hours of farming, so you can get bent. And then frickin' Teen says like, oh, I found that. I'm like, bull crap, give me that footage, I don't believe it. Though second generation Albinaurics look like frogs, part of me has wondered if they're regressing to a more primal form, one not related to frogs at all. Based on cut content for the Silver Tier Simi's questline, it might be possible that Albinaurics and Silver Tiers originally came from ants. If we zoom in on the icons for a Simi Silver Tier in its husk, its eyes still resemble those of the second generation Albinaurics, and while it still has 4 limbs, the bottom portion of its body looks like an ant's abdomen. That's right guys, ant lore. So this one I really don't have strong feelings about. I think it's kind of funny. I wondered if it was part of a bigger plan earlier in development, but just thought it was at least worth sharing the observations. I've wondered if its arms and legs are meant to be modeled on a human, since it almost looks like it's wearing pants and boots, and if it's meant to show a Simi in a state of partial transformation, but this is fairly subjective. With the Noxine riding ants in Noxtella, it's surprisingly plausible that the origin of silver tiers could be related to giant ants. Then I added the Dark Souls 2 song to just make it very conspiratorial in nature. Just like silver tiers and Albinaurics, the ants with giant abdomens explode in silver liquid, but to be fair, the ants themselves bleed red. But again, this relies on cut content, and if silver tiers are meant to come from the ants, it's curious there aren't any silver tier husks in any of their burrows. And that's kind of the biggest reason why I'm not really on board with the whole ant theory, even though I think it's pretty interesting. And then, of course, version 1.0 also had green liquid come out of the giant ant sacks instead of the silvery one. This doesn't mean they can't come from them, only that if they do, the Nox probably have a role in their production. And I really did like the layout of version 1.0 Nokron, and with having more of the Nox Night Maidens and whatnot. Albinauric bloodclots say Albinaurics are life forms made by human hands. Thus, many believe them to live impure lives untouched by the Erd Tree's grace. Because it's written as hearsay, it's unclear whether the Albinaurics truly are untouched by the Erd Tree's grace, and there could be multiple reasons for this, ranging from being made of silver, potentially predating the Erd Tree, or evading the Erd Tree's cycle of life, death, burial, and rebirth via body swapping. Let's start by examining silver. And with Albinaurics having runes that could be obtained from killing them, I'm unsure if they're completely untouched by grace, depending on what grace really is, so just leaving that as some food for thought. Compared to the grace of gold, very little is said about silver, and most information about it comes from what's hidden between the lines of the game. Silver fireflies, for instance, are said to be found near bodies of cold water untouched by sunlight, which doesn't amount to much on its own. However, with the Eternal Cities hidden deep underground beneath a false night sky, it may be meant to imply that silver is a byproduct of the night, or that the night itself may have a cosmic effect on those exposed to it for extended periods of time. This is reinforced in items like Duke History. Oh no, this is one of the lines that I flubbed the worst, I think, out of like all of my videos. It's coming up, I'm pretty sure. Which gives off the faint glow of starlight, or the way melted mushrooms drip with a viscous oil which resembles the sheen of a silver tear. Both grow in the false night of the Eternal Cities, and according to Soap, filth covering the exterior eventually seeps inside, soiling one's very spirit. While Ducast herba and melted mushrooms aren't covered in filth per se, we're shown time and time again the core principle behind it can be applied a multitude of ways. Miranda sprouts, for example, adapt to their surroundings, and we can see glintstone variants in Liurnia, scarlet rot ones in Caelid, and even frenzied flame ones near the Frenzied Flame village. Even dragons follow this principle, with Smaragd's body being corrupted through consuming glintstone sorcerers, Exyx breathing scarlet rot, Borealis being an ice dragon, and Fortisax being corrupted by the deathbite within Godwin. Thus, the false night of the Eternal Cities seeped into the Ducast herba and melted mushrooms deep underground. But where did this false night come from? In my video on Estelle and the Primeval Current, I mentioned the finger reader crone near the destroyed bridge in the northwest part of Limgrave says that Raya Lucaria's night sky is the product of its glintstone, but we can't see any underground near the Eternal Cities. Instead, we have the roots of the Erd Tree. Thus, it seems most likely to me that the false night underground is either a product of glintstone, the Erd Tree's roots, or the souls of the dead that couldn't be properly absorbed into the Erd Tree.
Yes, about that observation, I honestly still don't know what to make of it entirely to this day, that we had a false night kind of localized to one area. Because Raya Lucaria and Liurnia itself are covered in glintstone, and the finger reader crone says that it essentially has a false night within Raya Lucaria, it seems likely to me that there should be a glintstone connection. But if there is, it's very strange that there are no like gigantic chunks of glintstone underground, which is why I think like the Erd Tree root type deal might be fine. But if that were also the case, I'd imagine we'd probably have similar effects elsewhere, which we don't. So the false night sky could have been an entirely Nox construction. But yeah.
From the Prince of Death's staff and the Miquella Knight's sword, we can see that amber is interchangeable with glintstone to some degree, and from Selen's primal glintstone and the primal glintstone blade, one power that glintstone has is the ability to act as a vessel for souls. I don't necessarily want to make the claim that souls are what give Ducast herba or melted mushrooms their power, only that there's a relationship between glintstone, life, the night, and the cosmos.
Our art draws upon the powers embedded in glintstone. But what is the nature of such power? Glintstone is the amber of the cosmos. Golden amber.
I'm really proud of these effects during these dialogue sections to make them not so bland. So this is me obviously taking the Elden Beast arena and adding some transparency over the top of Selen's dialogue here. Little Church Lore says there is the massive glintstone in the Lake of Rot, which is close to the underground cities. It is true, but then I would almost expect to have like a starry night sky by the Lake of Rot. That would have been super cool, to be honest. I guess we do have the, what's his name? Is that the Alabaster Lord, or is that one an Onyx Lord that attacks us up there? I don't remember which version of the sword. I think it's the Great Sword, so would that be Onyx? Hey, Meow Laser, how's it going? Was I using a different mic? Sounds kind of stuffy. So it's different from the mic that I'm currently using, yes, but I commented on it when I was first watching. I must not have had very good sound dampening behind the mic, so you're getting it like bouncing off the wall a bit more in the recording for this one. And then Chadwick, welcome back into the stream. Methoda, you wonder who's made the Prince of Death staff? We don't see much in the way of death cultists aside from Fia. There are a couple death cultists, if you want to call them that, by the one dead miner Erd Tree on the north side of Lane Dell, essentially. And there's also like a death omen in the Oriza Hero's Tomb, if I'm remembering correctly. So, yeah. Hey, thanks, Little Church Lord. Appreciate that.
Amber contains the remnants of ancient life.
Oh, yeah, and we were talking about bingo earlier on the Discord, so this is another one to add into the bingo card. Selen's pontifications about glintstone versus ancient life.
And houses its vitality, while glintstone contains residual life, and thus the vitality of the stars.
And then this effect was taken from Liurnia and slowly, manually panning my camera.
Should not be forgotten. that glintstone sorcery is the study of the stars and the life therein. A fact lost on most sorcerers these days.
Once upon a time, the stars of the night sky guided fate, and the fate once written in the night skies had been fettered by the Golden Order. The Nox, who either existed alongside the ancient astrologers or were descended from them, studied the night and used its powers and starlight shards to make intoxicating drafts to produce mindless puppets. For a while, I didn't think too much of the way celestial dew was said to come from the eternal cities, and I assumed it was the treasure of a bygone era. After looking into things more deeply, now I have doubts.
So the 1.0 version description says, it's a nostrum used by members of the Carian royal family, made from gathered moon tears remaining above ground. So this would make it seem as though there's more distance between the night tears and, what are they called? The Yotsuyu no Herba? Dew-kissed herba? Dew-kissed herba. Yeah, whatever.
One thing which stood out to me was that in the description for celestial dew, it said to go by another name, a night tear. This doesn't mean a whole lot on its own in the English version of the game.
That's the part, that's the worst delivery of any line I think I let actually go into a video. I was just so done at this point in doing all the recordings and then doing the editing that I wasn't about to go back and redo that line. So just for posterity.
To me was that in the description for celestial dew, it said to go by another name, a night tear. This doesn't mean a whole lot on its own in the English version of the game, but the Japanese name for dew-kissed herba is Yotsuyu no Heruba, or night mist herba. The reason it gets its name is from the way it's absorbed dew condensating on its leaves. With this, it's made me wonder whether celestial dew, or night tears, are collected either from these drops of arcane dew or some kind of synthesis using the plant as an ingredient. It wouldn't surprise me if the reason Albinaurics cast sorceries using their inner arcaneness is because they're effectively crafted out of residual glintstone or something adjacent to it, since glintstone sorceries scale with intelligence and not arcane.
And thinking about this now with the context of the DLC, how you have larval tears, which are neither alive nor dead, or the way that death can become spirit tombs, spirit graves, whatever they are, makes me wonder if the Albinaurics have a larger connection to that kind of thing as well. And if so, I'm not entirely sure how different glintstone stuff is from spirit grave stuff. So that should probably be something I look into a bit more. Not that I imagine we'll really find a ton about it. So Hilko, you don't trust Muriel? That's mean. You want to hand him a tissue to get rid of all this spittle in his mouth, that turtle pope? Oh, man. Don't blame him. It's tough being a voice actor.
However, there is another kind of sorcery related to dew, droplets, and the arcane. Oracle bubbles. Just like the astrologers searched for the fate written in the night skies, the claimant of the lost ancient dynasty saw oracles or divine messages within the bubbles they cast. At first,
oh no. I never noticed how off-centered this is. This is going to bother me now.
the two may seem completely unrelated, but if we take a closer look...
I love that transition, by the way, just to toot my own horn, as though I haven't been doing this entire video.
At first, the two may seem completely unrelated.
Using the bubble to make the transition go away.
But if we take a closer look...
I'm so clever. Okay, so yeah, this is also one of my favorite parts of Elden Ring lore in general.
Within their bubbles, we can see what appears to be a kind of cosmic mist filled with stars.
Hell yeah, look at that starry cosmic mist where they divine oracles and fate in the false night sky of their bubbles.
While the kinds of stars within the oracle's bubbles might not literally come from the night sky, I think it's possible that through darkness, one can come into contact with the primeval current and allow its powers to seep into the lands between.
And I still think that's a really strong possibility, and I wonder if that had any bearing on the greater will or anything like that. And yeah, I'll shut up now.
When Azor glimpsed into the primeval current, he saw darkness. He was left both bewitched and fearful of the abyss. The glimpse of the primeval current that the astrologers saw became real, and the star's amber rained down on this land. So I very deliberately chose the orphanage music from Bloodborne at this part to kind of try to get in some of that cosmic connections to darkness and just like the heavens and water that's naturally present at that game. So that's me trying to subliminally move the audience there. As I mentioned before in my video about Estelle and the Primeval Current, one aspect of the Primeval Current's translation that doesn't come across as well in English is that while Primeval Current is a great way to literally break down Genryu, another way to understand it is that it can be the ongoing source or origin of something. This can still be inferred from the English, but there's a stronger implication in Japanese that the Primeval Current could be a cosmic source of life or souls, especially with the way celestial bodies govern fate. And now learning that the greater will itself kind of comes from a void in the midst of the macrocosm, whichever it was, that does make me wonder even more whether Lusat and Azur were trying to glimpse the greater will, and it's gone now, or something along those lines because it left their minds broken because there's nothing there, or not sure what I was going to say. So Jack, you're saying gold is nothing more than heresy? I almost said heresy. I don't know. I think the greater will could have been gold at one point. And then if you think of it as the Big Bang isn't where it started anymore because it's kind of traversed throughout the world and created the cosmos, the macrocosmos. And there's probably signs of where it was, but the whole Estelle darkness connection. And there's always been like really weird connections between fingers and darkness. So whether or not gold was endemic to the greater will or the lands between and then siphoned off by the fingers later is another matter of contention, I'm sure. The nature of fate in Elden Ring remains a mystery, but there's a decent chance it's meant to coincide with Destined Death since both come from Unmei in Japanese. The Black Moon of Noxtella was also said to be the guide of countless stars which govern fate, and I've since wondered if the moon that can eclipse the sun and keep Destined Death at bay is meant to coincide with the Black Moon of Noxtella since the moon appears black during an eclipse. The moon and the night in general. And that idea still kind of bothers me, like not as though I think that idea is wrong per se, but just if the Nox are indeed tied to the eclipse and the Black Moon is supposed to be representative of that idea, then does that mean the Nox destroyed the Sun Realm? And does the Sun Realm potentially having ties to Sarash mean anything greater within this context? Or Sarash's potential connections to Placidusax? So I think there's a lot of room for interpretation to make that work. I think in some ways it could be likely, but I also don't like to put all of my eggs in one basket when deciphering FromSoft lore, lest we have another Mesmer or even a Filianor situation. May play a larger role in death than I would have initially expected. When the moon eclipses the sun becomes drained of color, becoming the protective star of soulless demigods and keeps Destined Death at bay. Additionally, the corpses crucified throughout the lands between wake up and scream at night, so it may be that the sun is supposed to tie into Destined Death some way. So going on about draining the sun of color, I think as much of a pain in the ass as it is to tie the Nox to America all the time, which we're going to do, because that's what we do all the time, is that if the eclipse can tarnish the sun, then perhaps America used the moon to tarnish the tarnished and drain them of their gold. So that could prevent them from getting infected by Destined Death, I guess, and that's why she sent them away, or whether or not the removal of Destined Death coincides with creating the tarnished and sending out Godfrey from the lands between, becoming a god with Radagon. I think a lot of that stuff could potentially work together. There is the line in Warming Stones, which say the Erd Tree was once as warm as the gentle sun and would gradually heal all who bathed in its rays. It's possible this could be referring to the Erdtree before the Shattering, but since the Golden Order incantations don't restore HP, I think it's more likely this refers to the Erdtree during the time of Godfrey, before Destined Death was sealed to create the Golden Order. Meaning, of course, I didn't set this up super well, but that is kind of my cosmology or timeline of events there, that the Golden Order was created later after Godfrey's reign. I'm still pretty in favor of that interpretation, and I haven't really found too much to fully contradict that other than the telescope description. That's pretty much it. When Destined Death was part of the Elden Ring, the Erdtree was like the sun. Sadly, there isn't much iconography for the sun in Elden Ring to flesh these ideas out completely, but what little there is extremely impactful. In Castle Sol, the ghost before the Eclipse Hotel prays for the frigid sun of Sol to be eclipsed so that life may be granted to the soulless bones. The general idea is still there, but the Japanese differs by saying grant rebirth to the soulless corpse or husk. Again, it's actually kind of really annoying trying to get this footage of having the soul be in the same spot, but the Japanese... It's ever so slightly different, but I think the transition helps mask that they aren't one-to-one positions. The Japanese differs by saying grant rebirth to the soulless corpse or husk. Again, while these are extremely similar, there's enough ambiguity in the Japanese to suggest that the ghosts of Castle Sol could be referring to Godwin, or that soulless corpses can be used for rebirth. This might be meant to tie into how the corpses of soulless demigods can be used to duplicate remembrances, or the way Fia can lie with Godwin to birth a mending rune. I don't want to get too tinfoily, but it is awfully convenient that the mending rune of the Death Prince resembles the eclipse, and that Ranni, who represents the Dark Moon, is responsible for killing her brother Godwin the Golden, who is associated with the sun in the Eclipse Hotel. I've mentioned before the mausoleums. Thinking about that again. Yeah, it's kind of weird that Godwin continues to represent the sun in a lot of ways if the sun realm was gone. So, I mean, that isn't exactly a problem by any means. But yeah, it is kind of funny that Ranni essentially kills the sun by being a lunar princess in a way. Hey, Doomfist, nice to see you again. The Banished Knights and Stormveil Knights are immortal, right? It seems like pretty much everybody's immortal for the most part. Elden Enthusiast, you've always wondered why the fires of the Eclipse Hotel look like the fires that the Omens underground spit out. So it's supposed to be Deathblight fires, because if you use the Eclipse Hotel, it does have the Deathblight effect. Hilko says, to them it vibes the Holy Roman Empire of the Germans. Could you elaborate on what you mean by that? Jack Geyer says, America's no better than the people she committed genocide against. I would disagree with that. She's definitely better. She's a god. They're chumps. The initial cut was papered over to pretend continuity, therefore it's all fuzzy to us. The initial cut of what exactly? You're talking about in Godwin or something else? Like the story in general? I'll wait a little more. I know we have a stream delay. You just went off on a tangent? Okay, well then I'll continue on. Oh, okay. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying now. So you're saying that the time lapse was kind of between the Sun Realm and Godwin in the same way that the Western Roman Empire was continued after a 300-year time gap. Okay. Exactly, Methoda. If America wasn't better than them, she wouldn't have won. That's 100% unironically correct. Cradling the soulless demigods are of Nox design, and the Nox have an exceptionally complex relationship with death, so forgive me if I jump between topics a bit. I don't really jump around topics. Despite protecting the soulless demigods, mausoleum knights themselves are not soulless, and their armor says, "The wing-shaped ornaments on its back evoke the Deathbird, a self-inflicted curse that ties the spirits of these loyal knights to the land, having willingly beheaded themselves so they may serve their masters in death."
Can you guys tell that I was using the same 2 seconds of footage over and over because this dude keeps teleporting back? I'll show that for you guys.
Knights to the land, having willingly beheaded themselves so they may serve their masters in death.
That's called the misdirect.
I think the reason these knights beheaded themselves is to symbolize that they've been drained of life in their blood, but I realize without context that's quite a leap. To make a long story short, in previous FromSoft games like Bloodborne and Dark Souls, being beheaded or cutting off one's own head allows their blood or life force to flow freely and be drained out of them. Thus, if the Mausoleum Knights drain themselves of their life, they might be protected from destined death much in the same way the moon drains the sun of its color during an eclipse. It's unknown why the Nox would shelter soulless demigods, but if they have the potential to revive or harbor life, the Nox may have tried to avoid destined death by swapping bodies or potentially using their moon and night to block the sun.
So yeah, about draining themselves of life, I honestly don't really know how I feel about that. I think it's probably the biggest stretch that I make in the game or in the video, but I also don't know why beheading oneself would evoke the Deathbirds, because the Deathbirds themselves aren't entirely soulless or anything like that. So it's supposed to just represent a self-inflicted curse, which I still don't entirely know the mechanics of how or why it tends to work out that way.
We don't have direct evidence of either claim, but there may be circumstantial evidence in the Talisman of the Moon of Noxtella. It's fairly small, but 2 jewel-encrusted cuckoo adorn the top of the talisman and hint at the guiding philosophy of the Raya Lucarian Cuckoo Knights predate them. To a glintstone.
And I really like using this as a potential argument to say that the silver tiers might be connected to the Black Moon of Noxtella, because if this is supposed to be the Black Moon of Noxtella,
Philosophy of the Raya Lucarian Cuckoo Knights predate them.
Then why it looks so much like a silver tier ball? Also, like, what if the Black Moon of Noxtella really was just a gigantic floating silver tier, and then it fell down, and then it broke? That'd be some messed up stuff. Hey Mal, welcome back in, and Kyle, nice to see you again.
To a glint.
Oh, you said there's lots of skulls on the feet of the mausoleums themselves, and when the skulls are gone, the spirits usually leave? They don't always leave, though. There are still places where they can patrol around. I'm pretty confident. I think you still have the patrollers in the Castle Morn area, the Weeping Peninsula. It's been a while since I've checked there. I don't remember Liurnia, though. Might want to check around there.
Glintstone Sorcerer. The body is a transient thing. The cuckoo alone knows its insignificance, yet watches over it all the same. I don't necessarily think the Raya Lucarian cuckoos performed body swaps or anything like that, but with cuckoos in real life being known for laying their eggs in nests of other birds and killing their young, it's curious how far the symbolism is meant to extend to Elden Ring.
Yeah, so if anybody's curious about that, I do unironically recommend checking out the source that I have here, Rhythms of Nature in the blah 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 valley. I'm not going to try to pronounce that. Berich Valley? I tried to pronounce it. I lied. By Artur Homan, and you could see what happens when the cuckoo pushes the other birds out of the nest and continues to eat what would have been this birdling's food from its parents.
And killing their young. It's curious how far the symbolism is meant to extend to Elden Ring. One other aspect of the cuckoos which fascinates me is that they're typically shown in pairs and may suggest a connection to the twin bird who is depicted as the mother of deathbirds. Of course, this could just be a coincidence, but the main point is with Nox mausoleums blocking destined death, the symbols of the cuckoo and their talisman, and the use of puppets that can act as vessels for souls, it seems likely the Nox tried various rebirthing rituals to circumvent death. If they truly did end up becoming Albinaurics,
Fudge, I was muted. Dang it. Okay. Fudge. So, okay, I was saying that the whole aspect of the cuckoos being related to the deathbirds is something that I've never been entirely confident in, but to be fair, we do have the whole Nox connection to the Wandering Mausoleums, and the Wandering Mausoleum Knights cut their heads off in favor, like, in representation of the Deathbirds rituals, I guess. I don't entirely know. And so maybe there should be a connection between them, but then I was also saying, for what it's worth, we do have Lucarian headless troll knights, so there might be a connection between the cuckoos/trolls and the deathbird type stuff as well. So I still don't really fully buy the cuckoo deathbird connection, or even like twinbird mother or cuckoo/twinbird connection directly. Of course, this could just be a coincidence. Yeah, when I wiggle my mouse, that's essentially you guys needing to get good and understand the words of our faith. Like the two fingers faithful, this is the one mouse faithful. But the main point is, with Nox mausoleums blocking Destined death, the symbols of the cuckoo and their talisman, and the use of puppets that can act as vessels for souls, it seems likely the Nox tried various rebirthing rituals to circumvent death. Oh, that was the other thing that I probably said while I was muted. So yeah, the reason why this little lion dude is important is because when you defeat the guy and then the lion, you get a silver tier, or larval tier rather. If they truly did end up becoming Albinaurics, perhaps... So, rebirthing stuff essentially. Perhaps there's hubris to their actions and being unable to reproduce naturally, or having bodies that break down and evolve in subsequent generations. Uh-oh. Elden Enthusiast completed an Elden Ring lore bingo card and posted it in the Discord. It's only got 4 rows. This isn't bingo. This is Joko. All right, let's see if we've already gotten a bingo so far tonight. Elden Ring lore. Alchemy/Rebus. This should be free almost. Melana's the Gek. Maybe free. Hayata's dialogue about the One Great. We haven't gotten to it yet. So we've got Sellen's glintstone. You know, I should copy this. All right, so Sellen's glintstone amber dialogue. We can, you know, can't I do shapes? Oh, it's annoying to do shapes on this version of the program. Let's do red. All right, so Sellen's glintstone amber dialogue. The Scow tree is the shadow of the Urgi. I don't think we've gotten that yet. I might be misremembering. Norse mythology. Shamans are Miko. Sun Realm. We have brought that one up. TA said, nope. Actually, in the Japanese. Yep, you got me. Feet. Uh-oh. Great tree, not yet. Carl Jung, nope, it is said. Has this come up? Oh, I did say hearsay. America is Jesus, nope. X is a mimic tier. I've been talking about mimic tiers, but I've not said X is a mimic tier exactly. So maybe this is like half of a one. Although, did you just get me because of the meta reference of me reading this bingo card? Damn it, bingo! Not really, though. This is not bad, but I would say it needs like another row and column. That's backwards. Another column and a row for a real bingo, because bingo has 5 letters. The Nox practices may have even been carried over somewhat by the Carians as well. When we first meet Roger, he says the Academy of Raya Lucaria obeyed laws which contravened the Golden Order. Other than studying sorcery, we're not given much information about what those Raya Lucarian practices were. Elden said, yeah, for sure, just something you quickly whipped up. Couldn't think of anything else. It's great. I appreciate it. I'm just teasing you, though. Based on Sellen's dialogue about the terrestrial taboos of studying the primeval current, and the way she switches bodies and is ultimately reborn into a seed of stars, I think Roger could be talking about rebirth.
If you recall, I was exiled from the Academy of Raya Lucaria.
Now you know it's getting serious when I gotta bring out the whole Dark Souls 3 Dark Fire Keeper theme. Little Church Lore said we could play Bing and then get sued for copyright infringement. You mean we can't get sued if it's just Bing? Oh, unless Microsoft gets us. So maybe it's Ingo.
It was for attempting to restore the primeval current of glintstone sorcery. The toothless pedantry peddled by the Karian royal family can rot for all I care. I want glintstone sorceries that open our minds, unbound by terrestrial taboos.
And so showing Lusat there is just to kind of show how misguided Selen's thoughts are supposed to be. A bit of foreshadowing, if you will.
No matter what we give in return.
You wish to know more of Lady Renala? She is Queen, head of the Karian royal family, and governor of the Academy of Rea Lucaria, the great and beautiful full moon witch. Sadly, her heart was broken when Lord Radagon left her, and then, when the Academy rebelled against the royals, she was locked away in the Grand Library. In the end, Lady Renala was left alone, cradling the amber egg Lord Radagon bequeathed her. Now she devotes herself to it through forbidden rite, the grim art of reincarnation. You would do well to remember, severing a vow, strongest of bonds, has consequences ever more dire.
We're not told why reincarnation is forbidden, and there could be multiple reasons for it. One could be that reincarnation would allow one to avoid the cycle of Erdtree burial and rebirth, hence why Albinaurics are considered untouched by the Erdtree's grace. And then I deliberately put this one when they may be Erdtree grace touched right here. So anyway, it was actually kind of annoying to get that footage of Renala shapeshifting her little dudes into stone tombstones, just because of like the actual angle and framing of everything. Methoda, you think the amber egg looks kind of yummy? Are you gonna soft boil it, hard boil it, scramble it? Captini asked, did Lusat's head morph into that orb eye thing, or is it just part of his hat? That's a good question, because, I mean, it kind of says that his skull fused into it in the item description, and we could wear it, so it might just be part of the hat, but maybe we're wearing my guy's head. I don't know. Methoda, do you think the amber egg would be soft like a jelly bean? Maybe it's got like a little bit of extra texture beads for that mouthfeel. Another reason could be that nothing good can come of it. In studying the primeval current, Selen becomes catatonic after she transforms into a seed of stars. Rykard's rebirth in the Great Serpent turns him into an inhuman monster, and when Bach is reborn, he also becomes catatonic and dies shortly after. Also, it was fun trying to get footage of Bach in a more PG-friendly position, which in some ways makes it look even worse, to be honest. Children born anew by Renala are all frail and short-lived, imperfect beings, each and all. Part of the reason I think Karian rebirthing rituals were inspired by the Nox comes from the way larval silver tears are consumed in the process, and how Renala's juvenile scholars are unable to use their legs, similar to Albinaurics. That's right, guys, the juvenile scholars are Albinaurics. I don't really know, though. Unlike her other children, the Tarnished is able to undergo a perfect rebirth, and I've wondered if it's due to the Rune of the Unborn. Yet if it were the rune's power alone, then Renala's juvenile scholars should have been born perfect since she still had the rune when they were born. Instead, I think the reason the Tarnished can still have a perfect rebirth is because they've been drained of gold and can be molded into any form, which can be paralleled to the way smithing stones work. And this is probably where I might get the most schizo, but probably one of the more grounded takes of the video as well. So, like I've said in other streams, I don't know if the reason the juvenile scholars weren't perfectly reborn is because they did not have literal possession of it, and they only drew on part of its power, but since we, the Tarnished, might literally possess it, that might be a reason that we're fine. But anyway, I do really like this theory, and I think it kind of holds water despite everything. Smithing stones 5 and 6 make it clear they're tinged with gold, and they can be used to upgrade normal weapons. Yet somber smithing stones say,
Special armaments with unique characteristics cannot be strengthened with colored smithing stones. Unlike normal weapons, unique weapons can still be upgraded, but they're unable to change affinities in Ashes of War. Ashes of War are memories of the affinities and skills imbued in armaments wielded long ago. So yeah, guys, this is a legitimate piece of lore that's hidden in an actual loading screen tip, unironically. Like, this is the only way you learn that Ashes of War are memories. And I actually had to reset my game a lot to try to get a cool looking background with it. So that took a while as well. I hope you enjoyed that little bit of lore information. In other words, special weapons already have memories. And this is from 1.0. With the Force of Remembrance menu, you can draw out heroic powers from memories. So we lost access to this with further updates to the game. Each memory can provide one power. Once that power is claimed, the memory is lost. And of course, memories, remembrances, there's synonyms, so that's not that big of a deal, but it's just spelled out a little bit more clearly here. Making them gold in a way, and they can't hold any more memories from Ashes of War, or have their unique characteristics overwritten by the gold in regular smithing stones. To be fair, not all somber smithing stone weapons have unique skills, and the silver mirror shield doesn't have a skill at all. Instead, the weapons themselves have unique identities or can be crafted from memories in the form of remembrances. And this is the not 1.0 version, so with the Power of Remembrance menu, you can draw out the power of a remembrance's namesake. Each remembrance can provide one power. Once that power is claimed, the remembrance will be lost. So some pretty significant differences between them, even if, like, functionally this is perfectly in line with what like remembrances are. Why do we get a memory of Renala if she doesn't die? That's a good question, isn't it? Let me think about that. Who all else do we kill, and does anybody else stay around? Elden Ring remembrances. I don't know why I never thought about that. That's a great thought. Do we get the remembrance of Morgoth before he fully dies? You know what? We don't actually get a remembrance of Baal. We just get his heart instead. That's interesting. Oh, Metter also looks like she just poofs off, but we get her remembrance, so that might be another one. Oh, this will be another thing to bring up to like the Nameless Singer, that if we get the remembrance of the Star Scourge, aka Radahn, and memories are souls, then how does Miquella get his soul back? So therefore, remembrances should not be souls. And of course, Rykard is still around because a serpent never dies. Malekith might be another one, the Black Blade. Okay. Interesting question, though. When Renala got divorced, a part of her died. Maybe her heart. Mietra. Methoda asks, are they getting imbued with memories in the same way that things seep into the soul, like the soap description? I believe so. I think that's supposed to be what's going on with the equipment in general. And I don't think this is limited to the bosses, because that's kind of what an Ash of War is supposed to be. Miquella gets Radahn's soul back with magic. Okay. So why can somber smithing stones upgrade these special weapons, whereas regular smithing stones can't? I think the answer comes from somber smithing stones being drained of gold. For quite a while, I thought somber smithing stones being drained of color meant they were colorless. I mean, it seems pretty obvious, right? However, in a conversation with Sinister Stromboli, he brought up something pretty interesting. Somber smithing stones 5 and 6 are gold smithing stones drained of color. So even though somber smithing stones have been drained of color, they're still gold. They're just not golden, if that makes sense.
Let me know if that makes sense.
The way somber smithing stones are drained of color is reminiscent of the way the tarnished have been drained of grace, and tarnished gold and sunflowers further support the idea by saying they retain their holy essence even though they're wilted and faded. If golden gold has unique characteristics...
Maybe that wasn't super clear, but the term for faded is essentially the same as tarnished in Japanese. So I probably could have set that up a little bit better looking back at this now. Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well, Platinum Chip, that Morgott kind of sticks around, even after we get his remembrance. Hilko thinks the Erd Tree kind of forms a smaller reincarnation loop that's themed around memories, writing, and law, and the way those made societies different from the more ancient ones. I wish we saw, like, Erd Tree reincarnation beyond reviving at a site of grace. Global asks, is the MC called the Faded? Essentially, yeah, we be faded, bro.
Or contains memories, then the reason unique weapons need somber smithing stones may be because they won't overwrite the memories of the weapon.
And I really had no reason for including this other than it's cool and not a lot of people really know about this visual difference between the fights. Anyway, so yeah, going back to what I was saying about the Albinauric things in Gurm, George himself, I don't know whether or not the term tarnished was a George R.R. Martin original or if Miyazaki and company had the tarnished as a term already set, and which came first.
This may also be why Sullivan's Amber Starlight Potion fails to captivate Ronnie, though there's also the chance she never drank it to begin with.
Gotta love how the lack of animations in a FromSoft game can make things even more ambiguous than they should be.
Just like standard weapons, the tarnished can be infused with gold, which is why runes can be used to imbue them with strength. I don't want to come across as saying that runes and gold are just memories, particularly since Melina asks us to share our thoughts, ambitions, and the principles we would follow when leveling up with her.
Hilko says, for clarification, in Japanese the same term is used for the tarnished as for faded. I mean, there can be some context between it, but so let's look. I don't know if G-Show is going to show it exactly. Okay, it does. So, Iroase is a way of saying, like, to have a color that gets faded, essentially, or drained, or to become dulled, etc. Oh, dull in color. So, to lose vividness, that's a good way. So, if you just ignore the Iro part, which means color, essentially, like aseru can still mean to become faded. So sometimes certain things need to be read in between the lines on that front. So if we go to the Elden Ring, and if we type in Iro aseru, oh wait, I forgot my Iro. We're not going to get it because this is conjugated, so let's go Iro a. And so, where are we? I'm blind. Okay. So, right here it's talking about the faded continent, essentially, and it expands about. But, obviously, within this context, the faded continent is not going to be talking about the tarnished. So, how does the localization have this? The domain of Livegrave, far south of the Erd Tree, is bordered by the northwest by the cliffs of Stormvale, and under its ever-clouded skies roll the great steppes of the Pale Lands. Oh, so they call it Pale Lands. Okay. And tarnished golden sunflower. This part I think is supposed to relate to the actual tarnished, so it's interesting that they put tarnished here as well. So Iro Asata is, Iro Aseru. Then we have our golden sunflower essentially, so it's like a made up word. And it appears even over here as well. So whether or not that's supposed to be actually related to the tarnished is up to individual interpretation. But I do appreciate that the localizers kind of kept how it can be ambiguous even in this. So whether or not you want to think this is an adverb or an adjective, or an adnominals rather, an adjective or an adnominal is up to you. Aristocrat garb. So yeah, in this case, I would not think that it would relate to the tarnished because it's talking about like the people of the capital essentially. But hold on, it's talking about like the state of the garb of the people of the capital, not like their actual characteristics. So travel attire worn by nobles in the capital, terribly faded and tattered. So that's just kind of one way to look at it. So a lot of it is really just context dependent to answer that question in a very long amount of words. Chadwick is short of love that Jisho doesn't give a damn if you can't read hiragana or katakana, the only dictionary with a barrier to entry. Does it? It doesn't romanize it at all? Oh no. Just show. So at least you can use Romaji to get into it. But I mean, it really isn't that difficult to learn these, not to be like skill check right here, but you could probably just like go to another website if you wanted to copy it. I don't know how other Japanese dictionaries handle it now that I think about it. Kotobank. This will be a Japanese one. Anyway. I guess I never thought about it. The lands between is called the Pale Lands? No. So, let's pull Pale Lands back up. If anything, it's saying that the continent of Limgrave is those or are those of Pale Land. So it's not saying like the lands between. Yeah, so essentially, like, underneath the storm clouds, the continent expands under... Well, hold on. Let me try to phrase this a little bit better. The faded continent expands underneath the clouds, essentially. Like the storm clouds, I guess. So, Pale Lands is just a way for them to try to hint at the faded nature of things, but what exactly that means is anyone's guess. Let's look at our thing here. All right, I think we're still good so far on the bingo. What is the lands between called in Japanese? So that would be like Hasama no Chi. So Hasama is essentially like the gap, and Chi means land, and no is just like a way to link nouns together, or it can be a possessive. It's a part of speech. So let's look this up. Lands between. I'll break it down for you guys with the good old Jaisho. All right, so this is the full string right here. If you just try to type in full strings into Jisho, it's not going to be able to tell what the hell you're talking about. But it can show you like the different types of kanji in your text here. So chi is the character for like ground or earth in a way. And then hazama is an interval, a space, an interstice, a threshold, or a valley, a gorge, or a ravine. And this has a different kind of kanji associated with it if it wants to be more specific. It can also be a loophole in a wall, a crenel, an islet. And you have different forms for hasama or hazama, which may have different connotations associated with them. And this is the type of Japanese where I'm like not the most familiar with like what the difference and nuance is between like using this set of kanji versus this one. Or interesting. It's just gate here. I guess that makes sense. And part of it is because like for a very long time the Japanese language wasn't standardized. So some of these references could just be archaisms. And so like when I'm going to find out like the difference between like this or this, I would literally type both of these kanji into the Google and I'll be like, hey, what's the difference? But in Japanese, and then I'll have to look at like Japanese sites to see if there's anything meaningful. And sometimes it's you don't get the best results because they're just like people with their like personal blogs or essentially like the equivalent of Japanese Quora. Which, I mean, it definitely can be useful, but it'd be nice if there was something more academic or official in a way sometimes. So anyway, hopefully that was enlightening. All right, let's go back into it.
Share them with me. Your thoughts, your ambitions, the principles you would follow.
Oh yeah, so in order for me to get this footage, this is partly why I talk about this kind of thing in a lot of other people's videos and they have to do stuff like this. I actually had to take multiple takes, one to get her centered on the screen with the dialogue in the bottom, and then I had to do another take with my actual camera just centered on essentially the side of Grace, so that way I got her audio to play consistently between both channels on the ears.
Principles you would follow.
However, it is worth mentioning that memories are interchangeable with runes to some degree, since remembrances can be used to grant runes in addition to creating powerful weapons and spells. Another way runes might hold the identities or memories of their owners might be found in silver tears. While not all silver tears transform, the ones who do on Noxtella carry tier 7 golden runes only when they're not transformed. Part of the reason I think they assume the identities of the deceased is because rather than transforming into the player like a mimic tier, they transform into members of the Band of Fallen Hawks. After they change, they no longer drop golden runes, implying they've been consumed for their transformation. The Nox may have tried imbuing silver tears with a variety of materials in an attempt to either clone things or create the perfect being. One of the tiers of Night Sacred Ground can turn into a troll, and the Nox may have even gone so far as to attempt to clone ancient dragons. The electrified silver tears in Noxtella drop gravel stones, implying the Nox tried filling them.
Hey guys, remember when I was complaining earlier about Teen Sith saying she found this stuff? Anyway, and when I had 91 arcane on my character, it's because I was using the mask to try to farm these stupid ass gravel stones from these electrified silver tears. So here we get footage not found. Seriously, I've killed hundreds of silver tears without one dropping. Extra life might be wrong. However, according to data mine information in the item drop tables, one silver tier should drop them. If you can confirm this, let me know. That is an open offer. If you guys ever have one of these gravelstone jerks in the Noxtella drop you a... Did I call him a gravelstone jerk? The silver tier jerks drop you a gravelstone in the Noxtella. Please let me know with a screenshot so that way I can rest in peace. Hey Jay Dixon, nice to see you again. Welcome back in. With gold, and the reason they have lightning is because it comes from the gravel stones within them. And of course, I might have gotten Fextrud, so I could be wrong here. These silver tears may not turn into dragons, but that doesn't mean the Nox didn't have some modicum of success. The Dragonkin soldiers have similar heads and limbs to the ancient dragons, and the Dragonkin soldier of Noxtella can even grow 4 wings like an ancient dragon and fly.
There's a pretty big discrepancy in the Dragon Scale Blade and Dragon Halberd descriptions, in that one of their lines seems to have been omitted. The Japanese for it says something like, "The Dragonkin soldiers were born as those who would be dragons, yet were unable to become them, so they were destroyed as ancient dragon imitations." It's possible to take this to mean that the Dragonkin soldiers were literally imitations of ancient dragons. In other words, silver tears.
Yeah, so I don't know how I feel about this, and perhaps one of the biggest weaknesses of this theory is the fact that you have a random-ass Dragonkin soldier. It's not one random. There are many random-ass Dragonkin soldier spirits in the ancient snowfield, or not ancient snowfields, what are they called? Consecrated snowfields, and you can't kill them ever, which is, I mean, you can kill them, but they don't stay dead, because they're already dead, I guess. I don't know. You can't get rid of them is my point. And they keep respawning, and they keep being big old jerks to you up there, and if we were told that the Dragonkin were destroyed underground, then why the heck are they above ground over there? It's maddening. So anyway, at the very least, that might indicate that the Nox Kingdom extended quite far above ground with its reach in the past.
I'm not the biggest fan of this idea since we don't see the Dragonkin soldiers actually transform from silver tears.
And this goofy-ass effect was essentially me taking the icon for the Dragon Scale Blade, taking the hilt, and then I think I just desaturated it or something like that, and then just enlarged the icon, which is why it's so terrible quality. And then I mapped it onto the troll as it was rising up. This actually took a lot of work because I'm really terrible at animating stuff like this, and I had to constantly refine the mask as it was climbing out of it.
But like Albinaurics, they can't seem to use their feet, and can use ice magic similarly to how second generations use frost breath. Dragonkin soldiers also seem to have roots growing out of them, and have exposed abdomens like trolls, so it might be possible the Nox had silver tears transform into trolls, who then transformed into Dragonkin soldiers, perhaps after partaking in Dragon Communion.
And I don't think that's a terrible idea either, because if they put gravestone scales into silver tears, then who knows, maybe they took like a Dragon Communion heart and put it into a dragon, or to a silver tear, or like a troll silver tear that then ate the dragon heart. I don't know. I like that idea, but I really have no idea what's going on with the Dragonkin soldiers.
However, even though we can see trolls like Theodorix who have transformed into magma worms, none of the drakes which drop dragon hearts look like ancient dragons either, so Dragonkin soldiers remain unique and distinct.
And of course, now with the DLC, we have some of that extra context that these drakes are more related to Baal rather than full-on ancient dragons.
What may interest me the most about them is their use of ice lightning. Frozen Lightning Spear says, "The Dragonkin were born in the Eternal City where they knew no true sky nor true lightning. Instead, ice lightning was their weapon." The Dragon Scale Blade, on the other hand, says it was made out of a gravelstone scale that was polished into being unclouded, so it's questionable whether the power of ice lightning comes from the gold being...
Oh, does it say sharpening in English? Okay.
drained from gravelstones, or from another connection to the false night sky. It's also possible that, like Ranni's servants in the Dark Moon, the Dragonkin soldiers were granted the power of ice through the Black Moon of Noxtella, but I'm skeptical of this claim. Ice lightning isn't the only lightning of a different color, though. Compared to the dragon cultists of Laendel's yellow lightning, the ancient dragon's lightning is red lightning. I believe the reason for this is that red lightning is infused more strongly with the power of life in a way that coincides with how gold during the time of the crucible was tinged with red and was said to be closer in nature to life itself.
Elden Enthusiast is still in the chat. That might be of interest to you right there, because we were talking about this off stream a little bit before tonight's stream started.
Golden runes reinforce this, with tiers 3, 4, and 5 saying even now they're still imbued with the power of life, and as their power gets more and more concentrated...
You weren't paying attention? Man, I'm going to have to back this up explicitly for you? Okay.
Ice lightning isn't the only lightning of a different color, though. Compared to the dragon cultists of Laendel's yellow lightning, the ancient dragon's lightning is red lightning. I believe the reason for this is that red lightning is infused more strongly with the power of life in a way that coincides with how gold during the time of the crucible was tinged with red and was said to be closer in nature to life itself. Golden runes reinforce, which is ironic as hell because when you go into the DLC and we have more people talking about the crucible, taint none of it is red coded like this. With tiers 3, 4, and 5 saying even now they're still imbued with the power of life, and as their power gets more and more concentrated, their colors deepen until red and orange suddenly appear in Newman and Heroes runes. There's a discrepancy in the regalia. You have a lot of thoughts on that, Red Tent? You'll have to share with me later? Alright, looking forward to it. So, sometimes even like the simplest effects like this can take a bit of effort to do. So, and as their power gets more and more concentrated, I mean, at this point I'd already had the cutout for like the item window essentially, but trying to center all of the runes and then play them at the same interval, but also colors deepen until not be on the screen too long or too short is kind of annoying, to be honest. Red and orange suddenly appear because I have to have it match up with my dialogue because I have my dialogue first before I add footage to things. Newman and Heroes runes. So I slowed it down when I got into the higher tiers, the introduction of the red. But anyway, I really do like the visual progression when you can see them layered on top of each other like that. So I want to play it once more. Hey, Sohalanthropist, nice to see you again. You had an orgasmic reaction when you saw how long this vid was when I dropped it? I didn't need to know that. Even now, they're still imbued with the power of life, and as their power gets more and more concentrated, their colors deepen until red and orange suddenly appear in Newman and Heroes runes. There's a discrepancy in the regalia of Yokade's description that might give Yokade, this idiot can't pronounce a damn thing. So anyway, yeah, it was kind of hell to produce this video. It took me, I think, 2 months to just write it, and then like another month to actually get all the footage and edit it together. It was a beast. More context as to how life is mixed into red-tinted gold. The English version says the blade's copper coloration is not to be confused for rust, but is a conduit for its wielder to move it by their will alone. The issue here is that copper can be read multiple ways in Japanese, and in this particular instance, the characters akakin for red and gold or metal were used. While it can be read as copper, this is a bit of an archaic term for it, and a different character, do, is typically used instead. So while akakin can be read as akagane to mean copper, akakin could just literally mean red gold. So to give a similar yet alternative translation, I have, it's the treasured sword of Yokade, a small ruined kingdom. Its red gold never degrades and moves freely within the wielder's ki. So thoughts about the red gold never degrading might be relevant as far as it pertains to the Scarlet Rot. Because I think the reason why I went with degrading here is because it's more related to a sword, and to say that its red gold never rots might imply some connections that are present in the Japanese, but might also go a little bit beyond what the thing is talking about. Because the verb here, kuchiru, is like to rot, to decay, essentially, but it doesn't necessarily mean to decay because of like the natural cycle of decay and like due to microorganisms. It could also just be used for weathering things, from what I understand. So while there's very certainly many connections or connotations of rot type decay within this, it isn't limited to those, which is why I thought in the context of a sword, degrade was a better option here, but I don't remember what the English says, even though we just saw that. Global said the sword rules. Its red gold never degrades and moves freely within the wielder's ki. Because gold can move through the user's ki or will, it may be that gold acts as a conduit for the user's emotions, and the power of lightning can be channeled through one's desire to slay an enemy. And this one I'm still not fully sure about, although I think it certainly maps onto topics that were in Bloodborne and stuff super well. The biggest hang up for me is just trying to definitively say whether or not one's ki is linked to their will, which, I mean, is pretty damn clear, but it isn't as explicit as I'd like, essentially. This could be why ancient dragons can use lightning as a weapon or summon it through their roars alone, and and why the Regalia of Yokade and Marais Executioner swords can dance through the air. In the past, I've wondered whether the dragon's red lightning and primordial gold should be thought of as unalloyed gold, and trying to comb through everything related to unalloyed gold has been a little vexing due to conflicting information. For instance, Loretta's Warsickle's glintstone says it's supposed to have been replaced with unalloyed gold, and it looks like a red gemstone in-game, yet the Halig Tree helm, Millennia's armor, Miquella's lily, and the unalloyed gold needles don't look red at all. This might have been a mistake on the developer's part, since the gem in her concept art falls in line with the other depictions of unalloyed gold, but I digress. The conclusion I came to, in regard to whether primordial gold and the ancient dragon's red lightning come from unalloyed gold, is that they're probably not the same. If we take Radagon's Rings of Light at face value, that unalloyed gold began with Miquella, then the ancient dragon's gold shouldn't be considered unalloyed despite it being said their power is pure and overwhelming.
I kind of forgot about the whole unalloyed gold beginning with Miquella. Damn, I've been reacting to this a lot more than I thought I would. Okay.
Ironically, it may be that being infused with life is precisely why it's not unalloyed. Although Miquella's lily is made of unalloyed gold, it being wilted and faded hints that gold may not sustain life quite the same way it's commonly portrayed. Heroes
I forgot about this.
are in support this, saying, "There were once heroes who walked the battlefields, abundantly blessed by the Erd Tree itself, who upon earning their honor simply died." Of course, we don't know the circumstances surrounding their deaths, but they still died despite being blessed by gold, meaning it shouldn't be intrinsically linked to life.
But the Regalia of Yokade doesn't rot. So maybe the red is death after all. I thought about it, but it didn't seem like it could work. Because, like, why would an ancient dragon be immortal, yet also have, like, death in its lightning?
So what is unalloyed gold then? We're not given a direct answer, so treat the following with skepticism, but I think unalloyed gold comes from one's will or willpower, which is often associated with life or the will to live in FromSoft games. There are a few things relating to Fia, Roger, and Millicent that lead me to this conclusion. When we first meet Fia, she says that holding the Tarnished will allow them to share their lively vigor and stout-heartedness with her and grant her the warmth of a champion. The Japanese used for stout-heartedness comes from Ishi, which means will or volition, and is the same term used in the Greater Will. By accepting our will, Fia is able to take our lively vigor and transform it into a blessing, or even a mending rune at the end of her quest, so runes and willpower may be interchangeable to some degree. When Roger says,
I'm surprised I didn't say the max HP thing there, that she does take our lively vigor. I thought that was probably clear from context, I guess. But yeah, when Fia does grab us, she absorbs a tiny bit of our max HP to produce that blessing.
Says those who live in death have committed no offense. They have every right to life, only they happen to touch upon a flaw in the order. Roger's Japanese dialogue differs by saying those who live in death are just eagerly trying to live, and that's why they've touched upon a flaw in the Golden Order.
So just to read that for you guys, they haven't made any transgression, they just live earnestly, and because of that, they've come into contact with a flaw of the order. Kenmei Niiki. Okay. Earnestly. It's kind of hard to translate Kenmei. I think that's pretty good. So they're just, because they're trying to live so heartfully, forcefully, earnestly, that's why they continue to live, essentially. They will be keeping them up.
What this shows to me is that the will to live transcends death, and it's why those who live in death can sickeningly refuse the call to return to the Erd Tree. This ties back into how Fia says Roger possesses great mental fortitude that anchors his will and sustains him despite his grievous wounds. I don't want to get too off track, but I think it's possible the soul acts as the mind, and by lashing onto the will it can remain alive, even without a body in death. At first I thought those who live in death were soulless like Godwin, but since spirit ashes can summon those who live in death, I've had to rethink this position. My current thoughts are that although Godwin is soulless, the will to live lingers within his body and is spread throughout the lands between and Deathroot. When the souls of the deceased come into contact with it, they become infected by Godwin's will and try desperately clinging to life like Roger says. Their unquenchable desire to live makes them effectively cursed to exist in a limbo between life and death. Millicent can befall a similar fate to those who live in death, even though she's alive. After we give her the unalloyed gold needle that's been repaired by Gowry with befouled blood, she regains the will to repel the meddling of the outer god of rot, and embarks upon a journey retracing the path millennia took through the lands between. So I was just trying to rethink about the whole puppets in relation to the soul spirit thing being in the mind and the body having the will. I was like, well, the spirit ashes of puppets, well, they're not called spirit ashes. The puppets are just spirits because you summon their spirit. But if they're anything like the Nox mimics here, then they might not have wills of their own, and thus we might be animating their spirit with our wills, and that might be why they're puppets. Because if the will is the different thing, maybe there isn't a kind of contradiction there at all. Methoda said, those who live in death don't really seem to be living their best lives, though. Mostly chilling in graveyards, not fishing, whatever alive people do for fun. I mean, they ain't got no organs and tongues to enjoy the fish that they'd eat with, so why they gotta continue fishing? Yeah, those who live in death don't look as though they're having a good time by any means, which is why Fia's ending might seem monstrous to the current denizens of the lands between.
There is something I must return to Melania. The will that was once her own. The dignity. The sense of self. That allowed her to resist the call of the scarlet rot. The pride she abandoned. To meet Radahn's measure.
The language used is a little flowery, but the pride Melania abandoned was the restraint she used to combat the scarlet rot. So it's kind of a little bit meant more in the fourth sense of like caution her guard. I don't think like the English to Japanese dictionary or Japanese to English dictionary does the best job describing this. And this is kind of one of the dangers of relying too heavily on any target language to mother language dictionary, and why sometimes it's better to just stick with native dictionaries, because you'll be able to read kind of what's left in between the line, because like singular words don't do the best job at encapsulating an entire concept here. So let me look up the native dictionary again. I'm trying to think of a good way to describe it. So how do I describe it? So she's like guarding herself, as it says, like cautioning. Let me read her dialogue here. The pride she abandoned to meet Radahn's measure. Wait, what is this? Okay. Oh, right. Within this context. So the pride that she was holding on to, so to me, this is supposed to represent that the needle is something she's holding on to keep herself human. And so she had to abandon her pride, the fact that she was holding back in order to defeat Radahn. So essentially, because Radahn is the strongest demigod, I'm going to talk about it, knew she wouldn't be able to meet Radahn, the strongest of all the demigods' measure, while holding back, so she abandoned her pride in humanity by snapping the unalloyed gold needle given to her by Miquella to fight Radahn utilizing the Scarlet Flower of Aeonia.
One of those rare times where I let the music do the work. Like her great rune, Millennia's unalloyed gold needle was infused with her rebellious Ishir will, and by taking it in, Millicent inherited Millennia's will to repel the Scarlet Rot. For whatever reason, Millicent sought to return Millennia her will, but Gowry schemed to overwrite Millicent's will with her mother's by making her fall into despair.
Oh, it's just... I realized that I'd soon be saying my goodbyes to Millicent, and my eyes began to well. She is to meet them very soon, her sisters, and when she does, she'll be defeated, surely, and begin to flower. Which is why, if you happen to be present for the girl's fight with her sisters, I ask that you side with the sisters and kill Millicent. It must be done by your hand.
I deliberately raised the sound a bit there to make it a little bit more impactful. Also, I got really lucky with the timing of Father Gascoigne's theme going with this whole sequence of events, because I was struggling to figure out what song I wanted to put in the background here, and then I just kind of put that one in, and it worked like super well, and I was like, hell yeah. I was really pleased with how this segment turned out.
And no other. Millicent trusts you, rather deeply in fact. Sever that trust. Nurtured by betrayal, her bud will flower most vividly.
And that betrayal part is going to be a bigger theme that we talk about in other streams as well. I say that like past tense. Anyway, yeah, so as I was saying with the music, now we get the bit of the crescendo that just kind of naturally worked with the end of his dialogue, so kudos to me.
When Millennia ascends to godhood, Millicent too shall be reborn as a scarlet Valkyrie.
By betraying Millicent and killing her, she would fall into despair and lose the will to carry on, leaving only Millennia's will and the unalloyed gold needle to flower within her. If Millicent doesn't fall into despair, she'll still have the willpower to resist her transformation.
Tell whoever put you up to this that if I am to flower into something other than myself, I would rather rot into nothingness as I am.
Yeah, so I quite liked making that sequence of events here. I made it look a little bit more cinematic by having a fake widescreen bars at the top and bottom. And then I had to take multiple takes to get her medium shot and then another one for her close-up. And then, of course, the desaturation to just kind of represent the fading of her life as well. Just a little bit of that director's commentary there. Hey, Without Horns, welcome back. How you doing? Something similar happens when Dungeater is given Celavis's potion.
No. I am the Dungeater. I am.
Though the English description of the Dungeater puppet says, "The Dungeater despaired at how he met his end, and yet, its utter despair invites one to care for it," the Japanese version is worded a little more strongly and says something to the effect of, "It's precisely because of its despair that it's worth loving." While Celavis's potion may not cause despair directly, despair seems to be a critical component in erasing one's consciousness or allowing external possession. Dungeater fell into despair when he saw the order he envisioned being stripped away from him. Likewise, Nefeli Lu won't even drink Celavis's potion unless she feels hopeless after the massacre of the Albinauric village. When the nomadic merchants were imprisoned underneath Lindell, they fell into despair and summoned the Flame of Frenzy, and Yura falls into despair and under the control of Shabriri once he realizes Eleonora won't be freed from her madness. Irina's Hayata seems to be the exception to the rule, but we'll leave that story for another time. That story still has yet to be told. I really had no intention, so I just couldn't think of a better transition, I guess. Like with those who live in death, I originally thought puppets became puppets by having their souls stripped away from them, but Celavis says the soul of every puppet has its own ambience,
and we summon their spirits, not their bodies, when we call them. So while puppets still have spirits or souls, they seem to lack a will of their own and move when someone else pulls their strings.
Hey, I like how I came up with the same thought that I came up with before.
Hence the reason they're called puppets. If Millicent rejects Gowry and removes the unalloyed gold needle, choosing instead to die as herself, instead of being held together by befouled blood, it'll be faintly moist with a spiritual kind of dew. It can then be returned to Millennia Scarlet Ionia, where it will transform into Miquella's needle and become capable of averting the fate of the Lord of Frenzied Flame. Although it's unfinished and can only be used in the heart of the storm beyond time in Fair Missoula, I think the reason Miquella's needle allows us to stave off the Frenzied Flame is because we inherit the will of Millennia and gain the power to resist the influence of the outer gods. It may not even be Millennia's will specifically, just the needle that's been infused with an incredible amount of willpower. Either way, if the unalloyed gold is supposed to be pure, would this mean that the truest essence of gold comes from the will? Maybe. There's probably something more to it we can't fully pin down, but it would be poetic if the truest essence of gold came from the will when the greater will is supposedly the arbiter of all things gold. With Miquella's needle being unfinished, it's also possible to conclude that gold merely has the power to contain the will, and that unalloyed gold isn't synonymous with willpower. As is tradition in a FromSoft game, everything comes down to individual interpretation, but I think it should also be noted that Miquella's unalloyed gold lilies can craft bewitching branches, which can be used to compel the wills of others, and the Regalia of Eocade moves freely through the will of its user, so there is reason to believe in a connection between gold and the will beyond what we see with Millicent's needle. Because blood can be used to repair the unalloyed gold needle.
Okay, I was about to stop this and bring this idea up if I didn't bring it up, but apparently I did, so kudos to me.
It also suggests one's will or their gold can be contained within blood, which is partially confirmed in how beast blood and gold-tinged excrement are tinged with gold. This also goes a long way in explaining why bleed is such a debilitating status effect, or how blood can be used to beguile beasts and agitate the spirits of the dead with beast lure pots and curse blood pots. Likewise, Albinauric blood clots can be used in alluring pots to beguile humans and demi-humans, but what may be the most interesting aspect of these pots is that the two-finger sigil appears on them. While most of the Two Fingers incantations deal with either healing or protecting players, there is a darker side to the Two Fingers, and in addition to spells like Darkness and Assassin's Approach, the Two Fingers are able to bestow Shadowhound beasts onto Empyreans, and use pale gold shadows to beguile humans with shadow bait. I've mentioned before in my video about Estelle and the Primeval Current that I've wondered if the Two Fingers tried to take control over Ranni like a literal puppet. As it turns out, in Iji's dialogue about Baleful Shadows, where he says if Ranni resists being an instrument of the Two Fingers, life will go mad, his Japanese dialogue says Ranni resists being a puppet of the Two Fingers. It's probably meant figuratively, but if there's even the slightest chance it's not, it does cast the Two Fingers in a much darker light. This is complete
I swear saying darker light about the Two Fingers was not a pun.
headcanon, so take it as you will, but one thing that stood out to me about Ranni compared to a character like Selin is that although both characters lose their original bodies and use puppets, instead of using someone else's body, Ranni chooses to inhabit the body of a doll even if it has serious drawbacks. Could the reason for
Yeah, so this idea struck me and I was like, man, this kind of fits, so I'm going to include it into the video. So I quite like it. I still, don't really think it's super concrete or anything like that, but at least for me, it is still kind of my headcanon there. I'm proud of my punning when I intend it, but not when I don't. And also, welcome back into the stream, Corn. Nice to see you again.
Or it be Ranni refuses to take away the will of someone else like the Two Fingers would do to her? There's not much to support it, but I really like this idea because it would help characterize the way Sullivan says Ranni's still a frail, gentle girl at heart. Going back to Iji's dialogue,
stuff like that might be worth condensing down into its own video, but I don't know. I just kind of don't really get a lot of about making videos that are that small when it's cool info, and I'm sure some people would like that in its own setting, but I don't know. It almost just feels like too clickbaity to me, or like not enough content to like really be worth it. I don't know how you guys feel though.
Dialogue. Instead of saying Blythe's thoughts hold no weight in the matter of his destiny, Iji's Japanese dialogue says Blythe's will holds no weight in the matter. If the two fingers are able to override Blythe's will to turn him into a baleful shadow, it would lend more weight to the idea that they may have also tried to control Ranni. Another reason to believe the two fingers hold a special power to commandeer one's identity comes from how Aeneas says we can use the two fingers to steal the power of remembrances from the champions and demigods we face. If the two fingers can reshape memories as they please, it would be grotesque knowing you could be twisted into something you're not after you die, which may be why Aenea comments on how the Tarnished recoils at her initial offer. The way the two fingers can control both gold and shadow suggests a dichotomy between the two, but it's a difficult subject to breach. For instance, runes can appear in skulls at night, yet...
So this was wrong. This is definitely something that I actually had wrong in my video. I don't know why I was so off base with this, but yeah, definitely might be one of like the most wrongest things that I put in a video.
At times, darkness and the night sky are explicitly linked to silver.
That part isn't, but the fact the whole skulls things, I thought runes only appeared in their eyes at night, maybe because that's only when I noticed them. So that might have been one of those Bader and Meinhof effects where I noticed them more at night because they glow, and glowy things appear more obvious at night than the day.
At night, yet at times darkness and the night sky are explicitly linked to silver. This is largely based on conjecture and might sound crazy at first, but I wouldn't be surprised if life and gold were originally tied to the day and night cycle of the lands between.
I totally forgot I made that point, and we watched somebody's video within the last week or so where they're talking about the sun and moon representing life and death, and the sun dies and is reborn every day. I don't think I would have put it that way, but I guess that kind of can be supported from this idea at large.
Should you rise as the Lord of Chaos, I will kill you. As sure as night follows day.
I forgot that line too.
Such is my duty, for allowing you the strength of runes.
I wouldn't necessarily attribute it to there just being gold in the blood, but another thing which has stood out to me is the way demi-humans' blood is said to boil when night falls, and the way their eyes turn red when it happens. It's the same as if they were under the effect of a cursed blood pot, which is probably a coincidence. But if demi-humans go mad due to the influence of darkness, it would lend credence to Iji saying Blythe will transform into a curse as the baleful shadow. The Two Fingers' ability to manipulate shadows and darkness, and be susceptibility to both, may be meant to work on multiple levels. The English description for the Cinque Dea says its design celebrates a beast's 5 fingers, symbolic of the intelligence once granted upon their kind, but the Japanese is a little more ambiguous and says it's modeled on 5 fingers, which symbolize the intelligence that was conferred to the beasts. It's possible the 5 fingers mentioned here are meant to be analogous to the 2 fingers, but there isn't quite enough there to make that claim for sure. Either way,
Cool thing the DLC elaborates on that, right guys? It solved everything. Methodi, you'd say Melina can't kill us on account of the Lord of Chaos burning the whole world down, but you guess she survives that? Hilko, you never thought about it? About the way she says it as though she's bound to kill us because she decided to level you up? Or Torrent did? Yeah. It's the price she must pay. Like, that's her sin, essentially.
both English and Japanese descriptions allude to intelligence not being native to beasts. If one attacks Blythe while Ranni's 2 fingers are alive, he won't be distracted by beast lure pots, but once the 2 fingers are killed, Blythe's eyes turn red and he's vulnerable to their allure.
I still think this is crazy, and I don't know if this is legitimately a fluke or if it's fully intended, but the fact that it only works on this Blythe and not the other 2 is just wild to me.
Although he's still intelligent to some degree since he manages to talk before becoming frenzied, I have wondered whether the beast's intelligence comes from either the fingers or light in general, since demi-humans go mad at night. If light and darkness are linked to intelligence, it might also play into the way the sun is always shining on Fair Missoula, even at night. There's not much evidence to support it, but based on how the undead beastmen of Fair Missoula can be seen carrying Sunrealm shields, I think it's possible the seed of the sun was originally in Fair Missoula, though there are humanoid those who live in death that can be seen with Sunrealm shields throughout the lands between. What may be even stranger is during the fight with Blythe as the Baleful Shadow, his weapon is coated with the reddish-black flames of Destined Death. Because Blythe doesn't use Destined Death outside of this fight, and only uses ice after his two fingers have been killed, it would imply his vow to serve Ranni was superseded by the two fingers, and that the two fingers have some power over Destined Death as well.
And for what it's worth, when we look back at that footage, we don't lose max health, we just lose like current health, so maybe that isn't fully Destined Death Flame. It could just be Black Flame, Black Flame, on top of a red-based invader, so it might tie into how Iji's coated with Black Flame at the end of his questline, so maybe Blade killed him.
Now it's time to put on a tinfoil hat and start tying everything together. When Ania tells the player about the Rune of Death, she says it's the forbidden shadow that was plucked upon the creation of the Golden Order. I don't think Destined Death is meant to be a literal shadow since it's conjured from flames, but it is questionable how Malekith is able to keep it sealed. It could be because he's Marika's Shadowhound Beast and shares.
Hey guys, you know what else is a forbidden shadow? The Shadow Tree.
There's an affinity with Destined Death, but it could also be that he's able to keep it sealed because no harm can befall a shadow and he's unable to properly die. When Destined Death was sealed, the true power of Black Flame was lost, and compared to the flames used by Blythe, Malekith, and the Black Knife Assassin,
See, like, even Blythe's
of Black Flame was
blade
lost,
flames,
and
though,
compared to
they look like there's extra red on it, and so I couldn't just blame it to him being an invader. It's weird. Hey, Otohaka, nice to see you again. Can it die twice? At least Blade can. I should splice that into the original video. Unfortunately, YouTube doesn't let you do that, so I'd have to, like, re-upload the entire thing, so... just re-upload an entire hour, 16-minute video just to add, like, an extra 3 seconds for a joke that has no relevance whatsoever.
the flames used by Blythe, Malekith, and the Black Knife Assassins, Black Flame seems to have lost its reddish hue, similar to the way the Erdtree lost the red tint from the Crucible, or the way modern dragons don't produce the same red lightning of the ancient dragons.
Wait, what I said?
Seems to have lost its reddish hue, similar to the way the Erdtree lost the red tint from the Crucible, or the way modern dragons don't.
Did I really just say it that way? Hold on, let me back up further.
Can befall a shadow, and he's unable to properly die. When Destined Death was sealed, the true power of Black Flame was lost, and compared to the flames used by Blythe, Malekith, and the Black Knife Assassins, Black Flame seems to have lost its reddish hue, similar to the way the Erdtree lost the red tint from the Crucible.
It's a little bit unfortunate that I phrased it that strongly. I should have said, like, may have lost a reddish hue.
Or the way modern dragons don't produce the same red lightning of the ancient dragons.
I think maybe at the time of this video I was under the impression that Black Flame is what you get when the flames of Destined Death are removed from the Rune of Death's powers, but... Well, I still do think that's a strong possibility. There's, you know, always room for discussion. Elden said, could the lighting of the area you fight the Baleful Shadow in disguise... Could they disguise Black Flames instead of Destined Death? You don't know which it is. So for what it's worth, I don't think it has to do with the lighting of the area because the flames on the sword are red and they were very clearly the sword flames as opposed to like the model flames when the model is red. And anyway, the bigger point that I wanted to make is when Blythe hits you, you don't lose max HP the same way that you do from getting hit with the Black Knife Assassin, Destined Death Flames, and whatnot, or even Malekith. So, if anything, it's closer in nature to Black Flame, and that's right, guys. Ranni's two finger is the one that was related to the Glowmite Queen, because she's the Glowmite Queen. Get wrecked. I don't know.
However, there may be reason to believe that Black Flames, Destined Death, and Ghost Flame were all originally the same flame. When Ranni used the stolen fragment of Destined Death to kill Godwin, the curse mark that should have been scarred into his flesh was split into two. If we compare the curse mark of death to the sigil used for Ghost Flame, they're nearly identical, only the curse mark of death isn't a completely closed off circle.
This is reason enough to assume there's an unspoken connection between ghostflame and Destined Death, but there's more. It's tough to see, especially while they're moving around, but there's a chance that Deathbirds and Deathrite birds were also imbued with Destined Death. Just like Black Knives and the Blasphemous Claw, there's a dark gash running down the Deathbird skulls and bodies, and they're even able to inflict deathblight with their shrieks. This gash is also in Malekith's Black Blade and the Rune of Death itself, though it's a little easier to make that out in their concept art rather than what we see in-game.
So yeah, the gash running through the actual rune itself could have been what Ranni stole.
Now, although Ghostflame is black and white and the Rune of Death is red and black,
and I bring these up quite often that the 1.0 version of the Deathbirds had different colored wings. They look more like Deathblight here. And they do have a Deathblight shriek, but I don't know. Like I do like the blue color of the Deathbirds. I also think the goldish color is kind of interesting as well.
Something that may be worth considering is that Ranni only stole a portion of Destined Death, and the fragment of it we can see in the Black Knife print is blue. I know the Black Knives still produce red and black flames when they use the Blade of Death, but if the missing blue portion of Destined Death were returned to the rune, would it end up becoming purple or violet?
I don't really fully buy this, but I figured some people would like it, and it's plausible enough that I felt it was worth including.
I was originally going to make the point that grey violets are said to be the same hue as Ghostflame, but it turns out this information differs slightly from what's in the Japanese.
Okay, I remember what happened here. So, I actually had a lot longer of a segment talking about the purple flames and the hue of Ghostflame as I wrote the script, but then I eventually looked at the Japanese description and I was like, wait a second, what the hell? There's no mentioning of this at all. So, I had to go rewrite some things, which is why this section kind of turned out the way it did.
Which just says that grey violets are the flower of Ghostflame. This is a little disappointing, since we could have argued something must have happened to Ghostflame to change its color. Even so, there is still some connection between purple and Destined Death with the way the murky violet iris of the beast eye writhes when near Deathroot, and the way Tibia Mariners glow a spectral shade of purple and can reanimate those who live in death. For what it's worth, in the unpatched version of the game, some of Malekith's attacks that used Destined Death had purple flames, but they were the ones parable with the Blasphemous Claw, and most of his attacks still used red. Maybe it was more of an idea earlier in development that the true flames of Destined Death were meant to be purple, and it got walked back later on. The Beastmen of Fair Missoula also used to have yellow lightning on the weapons back then, so they may have just not finalized a lot of visual effects until the very end of development. It's tough to say. Anyway, if the Rune of Death or Flames of Destined Death were originally violet, it would do quite a lot to explain the change in color of Melena's eye at the end of the game, as well as why the beast eye writhes near Deathroot. Setting aside the issue of color, there are still some other pretty big implications if Ghostflame and Destined Death are related. For instance, if Deathbirds can dispense Ghostflame and are imbued with Destined Death, it would call into question whether the Twin Bird is related to Destined Death as well. According to the Twin Bird Kite Shield, the Twin Bird is said to be the envoy of an outer god and mother of the Deathbirds. This could potentially explain why Melina has a wing-like scar covering her eye, depending on how much you want to believe she's related to Destined Death or the Glow-Eyed Queen. Mausoleum Knights...
Wait, that was on the bingo, wasn't it? What is it? Melina is the Gek? I think that's close enough. Even though I don't necessarily say it like super strongly there.
Also use imagery of Deathbirds, along with the crest
Hey Zyro, nice to see you again. How's it going?
of the eclipse to avoid Destined Death, which raises questions of how much the two are meant to be related. As I mentioned earlier, I think it's possible either the Black Moon of Noxtella or the Dark Moon could be depicted in the eclipse, and even if they're only tangentially related, it would be fitting that if Godwin is represented by the sun in the Eclipse Hotel, that he would be turned into an empty husk by Ranni, who is represented by the Dark Moon. But then again, controlling Destined Death isn't native to Ranni or the Moon, they just have the ability to circumvent it. It's often assumed that the reason Ranni died in body and Godwin died in spirit is because the curse mark of death was split into two when Godwin was killed, but there may be more to the story. It's said the fate of the Carian royal family is governed by the stars,
Yet Radahn arrested their cycles in a crushing victory, causing Sellen, and presumably Ranni as well, to become immortal. It may have been Ranni's plan all along to slay her body. I probably should have specified that it may not just be Sellen and Ranni, but certainly those two are amongst those who may have been turned immortal with the fate of the Carians held at bay. To free herself from the Two Fingers' control, and Godwin could have merely been collateral damage, but that also doesn't align with how the Black Knife assassins are shown murdering him. But then again, we also don't see Ranni amongst their number, and if Ranni and Godwin perished at the same time, there are some major discrepancies about the sequence of events leading to their deaths. Of course, it's unknown whether Ranni, Radahn, and Rykard conspired together, or if Ranni just took advantage of the situation. Ranni giving the blasphemous claw to Rykard to defend against Malekith would indicate the two had a close relationship, and Radahn's portrait in Volcano Manor shows he was close to Rykard as well. It's possible to take this to mean the three may have worked together, but with Radahn's adoration of Godfrey and Radagon, it's questionable how much he would have supported Ranni's plan, leaving things up to individual interpretation. If the moon can be the guide of countless stars, and the stars guide fate, it would then follow that the moon would have some power over destined death as well, especially with its ability to turn the sun into the protective star of soulless demigods. My thoughts on the matter aren't final, but I've wondered if this should be taken to mean that destined death's power comes from the sun, or that life originates in the dark, but this view might be a bit shallow. It's easy to take the way life works in reality and unconsciously apply it to the game. However, we're shown that life is multifaceted in Elden Ring. First, there's the spirit or soul, which seems to act like the mind of a being and can live without a body as a ghost. Next, we have the body, which can live even without a spirit, as in the case of Godwin. A third element, which can be easily overlooked, may be related to one's memories or emotions, which can take on the form of curses after one dies. So if destined death has the power to end life, does that mean it ends bodily life, spiritual life, or both? The soulless demigods laid to rest in the wandering mausoleums would suggest destined death can end bodily life, since they're guarded by mausoleum knights and their spirits are already gone. So maybe that would leave ghostflame to bring an end to one's spiritual life, with the negative emotions they leave behind becoming the wraiths and curses and hexes like Rancor Call. Yeah, not to pat myself on the back too much, but that's kind of an interesting point as well. The whole negative emotions / emotions in general aspect of life in the FromSoft games is an interesting vector to consider, because they do seem somewhat distinct from the soul side of things in Dark Souls especially, and they also seem to be distinct from the body because they persist after bodily death as well. So they're like neither true spirit but also not true body death. They're just kind of locuses of dark emotions perhaps. So does that tie into memory? Maybe. Souls only come back as memories in a way, so... If Destined Death and Ghostflame are once one and the same, it would also mean that Destined Death is connected to Helfin Steeple through ruinous... I forgot about this weapon. I know we talked about it earlier this week, or I thought about something which reminded me. Also mean... But it's really cool how we saw the Helfin tree in the DLC, right guys? Hilka says, what is life other than clinging to memories? Eating good food. Currently. Hedonism. All that fun stuff. I mean that Destined Death is connected to Helfin Steeple through Ruinous Ghostflame, and Lampwoods by extension. I also don't think there's meant to be a difference between a Candlewood and a Lampwood, as the kinds of spirit trees that we can see guiding the dead match the Helfin tree's description and have a lit candle design. As a quick aside, because I thought this was pretty... Hey guys, look, it's Siluria's tree. Maybe, I don't know. I could potentially buy that, Siluria's tree being a depiction of a Candlewood, although perhaps like a more perfect version of it. Pretty neat. Helfin comes from Helfin with an F in German, which means to help or be helpful, so they're literally helper trees that guide renowned spirits of the dead. I don't know if this means the Erd tree during the time of Godfrey was a Helfin tree. Damn it, and would this have guided people to the Skidoo lands? It only has one stalk, though. I hate this game.
So they're literally helper trees that guide. Bro, how cool would this have been if it was a spiral tree, though? Damn, FromSoft. Renowned spirits of the dead. I don't know if this means the Erd tree during the time of Godfrey was a Helfen tree, but it would fit in well with how the Helfen's light is said to be similar to grace in appearance, how Siluria's spear and the crucible tree helm depict a many-branched tree, and how candle trees represent a surreptitious prophecy of cardinal sin. And one of the things that annoys me about the shield, although I think it's actually really cool, don't get me wrong. Come on, many-branched tree, and how candle trees represent, is how the bottom depiction of the candle tree kind of reminds me of how the giants are impaled at the tops of the mountaintops. Represent a surreptitious prophecy of cardinal sin. Deathbirds are also said to predate the Erd tree, so it may be possible to argue the Helfen predated it too. However, one argument that can be used against it is there's a painting in Stormvale that shows the Limgrave Divine Tower without Stormvale Castle or the Erd tree in the background, and there isn't another tree in its place either. Then again, one argument against Godfrey's Erd tree being a candlewood is that it doesn't match the depictions of the Erd tree on the icon shield, Erd tree Great Shield, or the Erd tree seal, so maybe it only existed for a very brief moment during the war against the Giants before the Giants' flame was sealed. Of course, it's still possible the Helfen tree could be completely unrelated to the Erd tree, or even a competitor to it. Nonetheless, with the rotten... So that last little bit of a clip was the death root that's coming out of Godwin, and I'm implying that the death root might be a competitor to it. Nonetheless, with the rotten staff of the Avatar depicting the Halig tree as a kind of candle tree, and the way the prophets glimpse flame within the faith of the Erd tree, there's reason to believe the cycle of life and death within the Erd tree begins and ends with flame. Doomfist, you wonder what the role was of the Shadowkeep before Mesmer? What are the boats doing there? Well, it does look like that this it's the specimen storeroom, so it could have been that originally, or I don't know. And what are the boats doing there? I don't think it shows that like they conquered the Tibia Mariners or anything. I think that might have been done to represent like death funerary rites in a land where they didn't have access to the Erd tree, which is also kind of weird because if they believe the Shadow tree can take in remembrances and whatnot, then why do that?
O Erd tree, you shall burn. Burn for the sake of the new Lord. Thank you for guiding me here. The one who walks alongside flame shall one day meet the road of destined death. Goodbye. I hope you will become Lord. Lord of each and all.
And that Dark Souls 3 epilogue song just works super well right there. Before destined death was sealed with the rise of the Golden Order, fire may have been used to cleanse one's soul from the body, where it would then return to the cosmos or primeval current to potentially be reborn outside the lands between. And my reason for thinking that line right there has to do with how the moon used to guide the fates of the stars and stuff like that. I think this is why the Sword of Night and Flame is one of Karya's treasured possessions, and it would make sense that sorcerers would have studied fire sorcery before the advent of glintstone. Traces of this past can be seen in the glintstone Chris as well. While it oh yeah, I also really like the transitions I did here. Features an Erd tree hilt, the way its blade undulates represents fire and is symbolic of an ancient ritual. And the Chris knife representing fire is kind of used in other parts of FromSoft games like the Flamberge, but this is kind of also just like an Indian cultural thing as well. I don't think it actually has to depict flame in like was it Indian tradition? I'm pretty sure it might be, but anyway, it's very clearly like a FromSoft trope at the very least. Hey, Elden, you updated the bingo card? No wonder why you weren't paying attention. 5x5, only 2 empty spots? Okay. I was going to say you probably only updated it to make sure you got the bingo after tonight's video. I'll check it out after this. The issue with this interpretation is that it's still contingent upon how order is currently structured in the lands between. As far as we know now, the soul is immutable, but this may not have always been the case.
I feel like I'm really coming to grips with spirit tuning of late. I can...
Oh, this choice of song is really cool now, learning that in the DLC that the Frenzied Flame can burn the spirit, and so me talking about the immutability of the soul, I kind of like how this thematically turned out now.
see how and why immortal essence exists. A spirit under the Golden Order. I can understand their yearnings, what they become drawn to.
And so the reason why I zoomed in on yearning is because that's supposed to represent desire and want, and all of that being tied to willpower, although that's pretty subtextual within like the Dark Souls games and Elden Ring. As Roderica says, the spirit exists as a mortal essence under the Golden Order, which could imply that if it were to cease to exist, then spirits wouldn't be fundamentally immortal either. If this is the case, then before the Golden Order sealed Destined death, fire may have been able to destroy the soul. Another possibility I've considered is that fire has the ability to burn gold or destroy the will, and without it, the spirit has nothing to latch onto to anchor it into the physical world, allowing it to pass on. Part of my rationale for this comes from how we use fire to burn the golden tree, how Roderica says she's come to understand the spirit's yearnings, and how the Inquisitor's Girandole says, the smell of burnt blood induces despair in the victim. As I mentioned before, we know gold can exist in blood through beast blood, and if burning it can induce despair, it may be because it's burning the victim's will. I have to say, I like that idea, but I mean, that probably shouldn't come as a surprise based off of who made this damn video, but anyway. Methoda said, the frenzied flame can burn the spirit, and so can the giant's flame since it burns Melina. So, I don't know if it like actually burns her as much as the burns on her body, or soulless body, damn it, not soulless body, on her bodiless body, her spirit body, are just meant to represent what actually happened to her physical body. So, for what it's worth, if the giant's flame of ruin can burn the Erdtree, then maybe you can argue that it should burn the soul as well. But we also run into that weird situation where it can't seem to fully burn the Erdtree while Destined death remains sealed. So, I don't know. This ties into Moog and the Omen as well. Because they have cursed, defiled blood, they're filled with the desire and rancor of excess spirits, which Moog can make use of by combusting them into blood flame. This is partially why perfumers like Trisha work to make sure Omen and Misbegotten died free of pain. Because the heart sings when one is close to death, and causes one to cling so tenaciously to life, their desire to live reaches a climax, and the anguish of those who die can become a curse that invites wrath to others, according to familiar rancor. Yeah, so now I'm trying to think about the whole familial rancor, wrath type stuff in the Horn Scent, and their kind of cursed blood. Well, we do kind of have like the watchful spirits, which aren't entirely dissimilar to the Omen stuff. But I don't know if the color coding is right. How did I get on this tangent here? Oh, just the will. Okay, yeah. So spirit calculi not being gold. That's kind of what I was thinking about. But the Hornsent talk about the golden crucible. Crucible of life. So I think it's still my track. It just still bothers me so much that the DLC has nothing to do with like red tinted gold or even like more stereotypical goldy gold. Not even like the early gold of the Erdtree either. It's rough. Baldecan blessings work by allowing those who are dying to forget their aches and pains, which is why tales of perfumers were akin to the origins of deathbed companions. In death, there is only peace, for in death there can be no sensation. And then let me double check the Raven Mount thing, the mask. Because I don't remember if it brings up memory or if that's the Dark Souls thing.
This ritual implement relentlessly digs into the wearer's face, preserving one's human instincts while dressed in imitation of the death words. Let me double check the Japanese. So, instincts. It's fine. Hey, little boy. So I don't think that's going to work. I think it's the Dark Souls 2 DLC ring, the Ring of the Living, I think. This ring jabs into the skin, creating a throbbing pain that serves as a constant reminder of one's humanity. Hold on. Hi, cute boy. Here. No, you're okay. There. Okay, so it isn't exactly a reminder after all. We have Ishiki in both of these contexts. I just saw it. Why am I blind? Ishiki. So it isn't necessarily like a memory type thing that's being created. So it's just consciousness. Although they're conscious of it, a constant reminder. Okay, I see what they're saying there. So you just need to be mindful. Pain equals mindfulness is what I'm going to be taking away from this thought. Now, what was I saying in the video? Peace. Okay. Zyro said, well, Malekith has Destined Death sealed within himself. The Erd Tree cannot be entered because of Radagon seal, just as Mesmer's flame burning the sealing tree in the DLC. There's both correlations. I don't know, like, I see what you're saying, but Mesmer's flame kind of works implicitly, whereas we need like 2 extra things to work with the base game of Elden Ring. So we need the flame plus the rune, whereas in the DLC you just need the flame. But if you're just trying to say that the correlations are both tied to Radagon, then I would agree with that. All right, let me back up this part of the video slightly. Baldecan blessings work by allowing those who are dying to forget their aches and pain. Let me back up a little bit further. Because the heart sings when one is close to death, and causes one to cling so tenaciously to life, their desire to live reaches a climax, and the anguish of those who die can become a curse that invites wrath to others, according to familiar rancor. Baldecan blessings work by allowing those who are dying to forget their aches and pains, which is why tales of perfumers were akin to the origins of deathbed companions. In death, there's... So yeah, thinking about this a bit more, just having consciousness equals life in a way, which is like, duh. But what I mean by consciousness, like, pain can serve as a constant reminder in the sense, like, not a memory. So just awareness equals life. There's only peace. And then peace can allow one to forget oneself, I'm guessing. Peace. For in death, there can be no sensation. In a roundabout way, this confirms that curses and wraiths are paradoxically alive, since they have feelings of dark desires. This isn't to say all curses come from emotions. Although Marika cursed the fire giant to watch over the giant's flame, it doesn't seem to be related to the kinds of curses that afflict Omen, so there is a bit of inconsistency with how curses are handled throughout the text. I wonder if Marika creating the minor Erd Tree and the kindness of the Erd Tree to heal people would have also alleviated her shaman sisters of the pain and despair brought upon them by like the excessive criminal spirits pushed into their flesh. So
to give a bit more context to that, if like healing miracles or incantations can kill revenants, which are like essentially cursed beings, then would healing miracles also help the shaman or get rid of their curses? Maybe it's worth trying that effect on them. I don't think it'll like really work because they're like more corporeal, but it's an interesting thought. Nonetheless, the Omen are born cursed, which is why the Omen bear in effigy begs not to be cursed or hated. And there's a strong possibility their curses are contained within their horns, since the amount of cursed attacks an Omen uses rises in proportion to the amount of horns they have. Right. The horn connection. That does work. So that thing that I was talking about before, complaining about the DLC stuff not being gold and spirit calculi might end up containing wills and like spirits of the dead and whatnot. And because spirit calculi become horns, that's why these things are cursed essentially. Horns are cursed, y'all, which is what Dung Eater uses to curse others. Dung Eater seems to have known this, and part of the way he defiles the dead comes from implanting an omen-riddled pox upon their body, so their souls become trapped by the curse and become unable to return to the Erd Tree. It would have been extremely dangerous to deal with the Omen due to their cursed blood, so much so that the Omen killer Rollo imbibed a physic to rid himself of emotion, thus enabling him to enact his nightmarish labor hunting the Omen. Perhaps he thought he wouldn't get cursed if he couldn't feel anything. What interests me in particular about the accursed blood is that despite its propensity to drive people mad... Let me double check the Crusade insignia, or whatever it says about impurity. The warriors who fought in the Crusade set aside both honor and mercy to wantonly impale and scorch those deemed impure. Those who felt invigorated by each cry of death were the same men who were certain of the sanctity of the campaign. I feel like there might be something else in the DLC which relates to this. I'm not seeing anything super relevant. What was it called? The Pearl Talisman? Alright, let me type in Pearl. Pearl, no, not Pearl Drake, Pearl. Pearl Shield Talisman. The nature and the potential impurities surpassed the understanding of the knights, and so they were forced to prepare for all threats known or unknown. Talisman depicting a knight bearing a pearlescent great shield boosts all non-physical damage negation while guarding. Okay. So nothing super concrete on that front, unless there's something that I just haven't thought of. Vare was the exception. Compared to the other bloody fingers like Okina, who are consumed with madness for bloodlust, Vare remains lucid. Oh, so this part's kind of important. I'll talk over it, or about it. What interests me in particular about the accursed blood is that despite its propensity to drive people mad, Vare was the exception. So this part I kind of forgot or didn't realize what the entirety of the Vare White Mask description thing said. So he's the only war surgeon who wasn't gotten by the accursed blood, so Okina can still be fine, I guess, and that doesn't contradict anything. Compared to the other bloody fingers like Okina, who are consumed with madness for bloodlust, Vare remains lucid. It isn't explained why, but one of the things Vare shares in common with Mohg is that they're both able to feel love, whereas the other bloody fingers have lost their minds completely. Because I forgot that Okina can be summoned to fight with you against Radahn, and he's not just like a full-on mound-making madman that just kills everybody he sees. They say mercy is a catalyst for bloodlust, and Vari's love for the Tarnished. And of course, I think the Blade of Mercy has a lot of relations to the Dagger Talisman, the Blade of Mercy being the DLC item. So the white-garbed field surgeons came to the aid of friend and foe alike by dealing a final deadly thrust to spare them from the prolonged agony of a mortal wound. And I think that has a lot of tie-ins to the fly sickness, where they suffered for it, and the sense of mercy ended up becoming a catalyst for bloodlust. So maybe that's part of why the Hornsent had a connection to the Mother of Truth, because they were doing mercy killings for the Flymen. Maybe they also did mercy killings after the battles against the Crusaders. But they did say that they discovered the visage of the outer god in their ancestors' statue, shadow thing, whatever you call it. Mercy is a catalyst. Without Horn said, the Blade of Mercy also has a lot to do with Mercy in our chat. Does it? Unfortunately, she's not here right now, it seems. For bloodlust. And Vari's love for the Tarnished is what sets him against the Two Fingers, who hold no love for their kind. Mohg's love, on the other hand, is a little more complicated. It would be easy to point to Mohg's problematic relationship with Miquella and call it a day, but Mohg's role is a little more complicated than what's shown on the surface. So I gotta go deep through Mohg to get on the inside. Bloodboon. It said when Mohg stood before the Mother of Truth deep underground, his accursed blood erupted with fire, and he was besotted with the defilement he was born into. His great rune elaborates, saying, his devout love for the wretched mire he was born into soaked the rune itself with blood. I don't have a good answer why love would allow Vari and Mohg to tame the accursed blood, but in Dark Souls 2, love is described as a curse in the Bellkeeper's seal. Maybe the same is true in Elden Ring. If so, could the reason Vari and Mohg tamed the accursed blood be because they were already cursed and couldn't be cursed any further? I'm a little doubtful, because Mohg was born cursed as an omen, and his love came after he encountered Bloodflame, so the idea of love being a curse, and it being able to repel other curses, just doesn't feel as impactful to me as I think it should be. But to be fair, Morgoth seems to have recanted his cursed blood out of love for the Erdtree, and laments it when his cursed blood is spilled upon its thrones.
The thrones, stained by my curse.
So his curse is equivocated to his blood in this dialogue. I don't know why I never really thought about it quite that way.
Such shame I cannot bear. Thy part in this shall not be forgiven.
Another possible reading is that love is an overwhelmingly strong emotion that can allow one to endure and resist the kinds of negative emotions that spawn curse. Oh my god, guys, love can allow you to endure? Hell yeah, bro, I called it. Oh man, boom, right on the money, Midra. The word was a curse. In other words, love. Bro, that's so damn vindicating, because I was like really iffy and on the fence about this part of the script. Like the unalloyed gold needle, might provide one with enough willpower to resist the meddling of outer gods. Ah, bros! Oh man, I feel so happy. I'm curious as to what Vari loved, or if he was just moved out of compassion for the Tarnished, and I wonder if his decision to turn his back on the Two Fingers is anything like Bernal's, and has to do with the way Bloody Fingers are supposed to sacrifice their maidens, but I guess that's something we'll never know. Am I going to do a Love and Midra video now? That might not be a bad idea. I've got some pretty big ideas in my mind right now, like, once I beat my Path of Exile fixation in Kazan, I want to probably like write a big script talking about the timeline of the DLC and just a bunch of random thoughts that we've been talking about in the streams the past couple weeks in general. Spoilers. A final possibility as to how Vari and Mohg circumvent the jaw of the accursed blood is that when the Tarnished decides to become a vassal of Mohg, Vari injects them with noble blood, presumably from the Bloody Finger itself, and from that blood the Tarnished feels agony or pain. Oh yeah, I don't remember if I bring this up in this video, but it's also very interesting to me that the finger itself is alive and feels pain, as opposed to like the wizened fingers that you can use for like the other invasions and stuff. In previous FromSoft games like Dark Souls 2, pain was used as a reminder of one's humanity against the Halloween curse, and the concept is carried over into Elden Ring through the Skeletal Mask, which says, "This ritual implement relentlessly digs into the wearer's face, preserving one's human instincts while dressed in imitation of the Deathbirds." The pain or agony the tarnished feels may be enough for them to remember their humanity, and Mohg may be kept relatively sane through the curses coursing through his veins. I'm a little skeptical of this idea as well though, because if becoming a knight or vassal of Mohg requires being injected with the blood of the Bloody Finger, it would seem out of character for Okina and the Nameless White Masks to have not received the blood or feel its pain. One aspect of the blood which fascinates me is that while it would be easy to attribute its existence to Mohg, Mohg didn't even feel its madness until Okina's blade touched his flesh. Welcome into the stream. I'm going to call you She, because that's essentially what your katakana name is in the Hanko's type stamp. But anyway, have you missed the Bloodborne vids? Yes. So we watched a very short one at the very beginning of the stream. But anyway, welcome on in regardless. What this reveals is that the madness is something endemic within the blood. Those who continually shed and become soaked with it go mad, and the Land of Reeds with its plethora of weapons that inflict bleed succumb to the blood-soaked madness long before Mohg met Okina. If I were to hazard a guess, it would be that one's yearning or desire can be contained within the blood and the gold within it, and as such, it can have an alluring effect on those who come into contact with it. It's uncertain if all Bloody Fingers are followers of Mohg, since Eleonora and the Ravenmount Assassin don't use any blood-based incantations, and the cessblood might have already existed independently in the Land of Reeds. But it seems that if a weapon is soaked within blood, it can become sharper and even take on the properties of Bloodflame, as evidenced by Okina's Rivers of Blood and Eleonora's Poleblade. And this, I think, would also tie into some of that soap lore that I was talking about earlier. The way that Miranda flowers can become like the Frenzied Flame flowers, the Rot flowers, etc., and Borealis can become an ice dragon, so why couldn't this become a Bloodflame blade? Also, I really love the design of Eleonora's pole blade. It's super pretty, super deadly, femme fatale. This might tie back into the esoteric skills of Eocade, where Elamir of the Briar was able to furnish the Moray Executioner's sword, a blade that would have been soaked with the blood of countless victims, with the skills of his homeland, allowing it to move freely through his will. Yeah, and I'll kind of stand by that interpretation that the blood might allow him to control the blade through his willpower. To briefly go back, I think we might have an example of that in something like Dark Souls 3 as well, but I can't remember off the top of my head. Back to the idea of love, it's ironic that Uro warns the player to not let emotions stay their blade, when it's exactly what he does in his fight with Eleonora.
I am Ura, as you might recall. Hunter of bloody fingers, tarnished, held in thrall by cessblood. Zealots, who stalk their own. If you stay the path, you're certain to face more of them. Just remember, no kinship with their ilk remains. Their madness precludes it. Don't let your emotions stay your blade.
He knows there. It's kind of interesting thinking about this context in relation to Ansbach and the Noble Knights, whatever the Noble Blood Knights, whatever they're called, because that's certainly not how they seem to play out in the base game at all. Without horns, you'd not clocked Elamir the Briar as a Sith Lord until I pointed it out to you. You're welcome. There can be no kinship with a bloody finger, yet hopes that by cutting off her violet finger, Eleonora will return to her former self. However, she is either unable or unwilling to forgo its madness and cuts him down regardless. The man once known as Yura kept a woman in the deepest reaches of his heart, and despite performing the same actions as a bloody finger and relentlessly hunting down others, he doesn't go mad. At least, not until he gives up hope and becomes possessed by Shabriri, So maybe there is something more to love's ability to withstand the corruption of the blood after all. I feel vindicated because of Midra. The funny thing about Yura's love for Eleonora is that she wears the Drake Knight set, which says, "From birth, Drake Knights speak not a word. They spend their lives pursuing the strength of dragons, for its sublime beauty and inspiration of awe." So if Yura were trying to get Eleonora to return to her former self, she probably wouldn't say much in the way of a thank you. All joking aside, there's another line Yura has about Eleonora that... Damn it, I was muted doing that. Okay, so I was going to say, I enjoyed my little joke there, but in case you didn't see it, I also added a fake little ellipsis here to represent the silence of Eleonora being a Drake Blood Knight. So, had fun making that one. All joking aside, there's another line Yura has about Eleonora that's piqued my interest.
Eleonora, it seems I am no match for you, but I've learned a thing or two myself. You see, I've sliced the finger off. Please. Please, Eleonora. Yield to the cessblood no longer. Do not stain the immaculacy of your sword. Your flesh. Your fire. His Japanese line differs by saying he doesn't want her dragon fire stained by blood.
Oh, okay, I did do that. Anyway, because the way that he talks about the way that, like the dialogue kind of trails off and gets smaller, that's why I made my font get smaller as well. Oh, wait, no, maybe I thought there's a different way that I wanted to phrase this. Oh, that's what it was. So instead of saying dragon fire and getting that smaller, I think I wanted to put please at the end. Don't sully your blade, your body, your beautiful dragon fire, please, and then have that trail off. Anyway, that's not important. I just thought about it after I made the video. I was like, oh man, I could have switched that. Hey Almel, welcome into the stream. Blythe's love and loyalty to Rani is also a case of resisting full transformation to a shadow beast, maybe? He does succumb to a degree, but he does also seem to do an okay job resisting. I'm a little bit curious about what happens to him at the end of his quest after the that Rani's two fingers get killed. Maybe he's supposed to continue to turn on Rani and he doesn't, and so maybe the icy sword that he wields depicts that he does love Rani and he does continue to follow his oath to her. So maybe that could be one way of reading things there. I don't know how literally his line should be taken, but one thing that seems to be shared in common between the followers of Moog and those who partake in Dragon Communion is that both... Bro, I forgot how cool that footage looked. Oh man, just the way my body hits the pillar and it breaks, that's pretty metal. I want to watch that again. Be shared in common between the followers of Moog and those who partake in Dragon Communion is that both become overcome by an insatiable yearning for blood and power.
You must not forget, though, those who partake in Dragon Communion will one day shed their humanity. Their hunger for dragon, their yearning, only worsens until the floodgates burst, unleashing eternal torment. The strength of a mighty dragon. Magnificent, but deadly.
So thinking about curses and gold in general, it's interesting that those who partake in Dragon Communion don't necessarily get cursed in the stereotypical manner. And maybe it's because gold is different from like the negative emotions of curses. Or maybe like the gold within Dragon Hearts is without the kind of baggage that comes along with other forms of gold and blood and stuff like that. But of course, one might also make the argument that humans or trolls that eat the dragon communion hearts might become cursed to become dragonkin or worms themselves. Sunny Lion Mane, welcome into the stream. Gold doesn't tarnish. It can, because you have golden tarnished sunflowers or tarnished golden sunflowers. So that's the whole reason why we've got the tarnished. Without horns, you got Blythe to respawn at the tower after you killed him. You don't remember if that's intended behavior or if it was a glitch, though. When you say the tower, do you mean the one where he's already got the icy sword? Because that should not be possible. But you can make him aggro at the tower in the beginning parts of Ronnie's questline, and then he'll keep respawning there. It was the icy sword one? That's interesting. That should not happen for sure.
It's no surprise that dragon communion is ruinous.
It's a little strange how Euro will condemn bloody fingers in one breath and suggest the tarnished partake in dragon communion the next, when both paths lead to shedding one's humanity. Yeah, I always thought that was weird, and I felt like Euro's character probably was meant to be different in a previous draft of the story. I don't know. Perhaps the difference is compared to the dragons, which have a pure and overwhelming power, the blood of the tarnished is defiled and impure. In some ways, it would be convenient if following the path of blood would lead one down the path of the dragon, considering how Moog can grow wings in his fight and the way a dragon's heart continues to beat vivaciously, but the blessings of blood and dragon communion differ from one another. While those who take in the blood of the bloody finger have their eyes turn red, those who partake in dragon communion have their eyes turn a more brilliant shade of gold and gain the slitted eyes of a dragon. Despite their intense yearning and desire, neither path is strong enough to resist succumbing to the frenzied flame, so even though followers of Dragon Communion consume gold through blood and gravelstone, it doesn't seem to be on par with the level of Miquella's needle. It's also unclear if those who partake in cess blood transform like those who take Dragon Communion. Sanguine nobles and red Albinaurics would suggest so, but since Vare, Okina, and the nameless white masks don't transform, it might suggest there's a difference. I do really regret using that footage for Vare because of how often it repeated. It kind of just ended up looking bad. Since Vare, if I was smarter, I would have taken it, gone to the end of the footage, then reversed it, and then copied and pasted it, so that way it didn't look so jittery. And the nameless white masks don't transform. It might suggest there's a difference between a tarnished cess blood and the kind of cursed blood Moog has. One idea I've had for a while is that, similar to the law of regression, or perhaps due to it, gold yearns eternally to converge. Because gold and runes represent power, if it were to all become concentrated into a single being, it would essentially become the pinnacle of life in the current order. Thus, if something other than the apex being were to start gathering power, would it transform to become more similar to that apex being? I think this could potentially be what happens in Dragon Communion. By consuming dragon hearts and the gold held within, men and trolls become more and more draconic until their bodies and minds can't take it anymore, and they become to form dragons. To put it another way, if we were to ask if Placidusax and the ancient dragons are the way they are because they're dragons, or if it's the gold that's made them so, I think the dragons represent the pinnacle of physical life, and things naturally start becoming more draconic the stronger they become. In other words, this is like a different interpretation of the everything is going to eventually become a crab theory. So yeah, although I am a pretty big fan of this idea, I couldn't begin to tell you then why the Tarnished himself or herself does not go on to become a dragon, although that would kind of be fun and cool to consider as well. This might be why those who are affected by the crucible started taking on more draconic traits, or why rune bears have the slitted eyes of a dragon. One reason I'm inclined to think this is due to the way the Elden Beast and ulcerated tree spirits faintly resemble dragons. If I were to answer why the Elden Beast differs so much from the ancient dragons if they both draw upon the power of gold, I think with the Erd Tree being offered the bodies of the dead, it originally absorbed their left-behind wills. As such, my current view on the Elden Beast is that it's like the collective wills of all those who died and were absorbed by the Erd Tree, so it doesn't have a proper physical form, and it might not have any particular goals beyond a primal desire to stay alive, similar to the old one of Demon Souls, or the Moon Presence in Bloodborne.
Or spoiler redacted. So I went ahead and said it, and because the reason why I said Moon Presence but the script says spoiler redacted is because it was a little bit awkward as hell saying spoiler redacted out loud and just having it play that way in the script. Because I think I did make a take where I said spoiler redacted, and it just didn't work. So anyway. You think they should have let one of the rune bearers drop a dragon heart in the base game? That would have been awesome.
The reason the Elden Beast looks like a dragon is because dragons are efficient at staying alive. With this view in mind, I think it's possible to still see the Elden Beast as a vassal of the Greater Will, and it could also conform to an implication in the Japanese script that the Elden Beast is a descendant of it.
Bros, it took me so long to farm for the Elden Beast grab attack. So I made sure to have the footage slowed down so we could appreciate it for more than a half a second of game time.
In the Japanese script that the Elden Beast is a descendant of it. If unalloyed gold is synonymous with willpower, and it comes from the Elden Ring which came from the Elden Beast, I think it would end up tying things together pretty nicely, but that's just my opinion. I realize I've covered quite a lot in this video, much more than I originally intended, so to give a quick recap, Albinaurics come from silver, which I'm still not quite entirely sure what to make of yet, and gold either comes from or contains willpower. I think it's possible that life is a combination of spirit and will, since spirits can live without bodies, and beings like crystallians are inorganic yet alive. Fire may have been used in ancient times to separate spirit from the will, and with the flame of ruin and destined death being sealed away, it's created a kind of stasis in the lands between where spirits that wish to stay alive can do so by virtue of their will alone.
Even tainted flesh was given to ghostflame. Tainted flesh should be cursed flesh, which means it's dead, but not actually dead because it's still alive. So they'd essentially be burning life in death as opposed to just burning death. But like life and death isn't those who live in death. It's a different thing, apparently, in this paradigm that I'm making here. It's weird because, like, ghost birds want the remaining living matter to become cinders for their death hexes. Although they rake it out of death. But it gets trapped in the flesh. So that's probably the biggest thing, and that might be where we get putrescence from. Okay, so I'm thinking this is all still working. Mathota said, isn't the bottom of the arc meant to receive the Elden Ring's bounty? That didn't really look like a bounty to you? I mean, the Elden Beast placed a bounty on us and was taking it for himself, right? Dead or alive. Preferably dead.
There's more I wish I could cover, and I don't expect anyone to agree.
So this is the stuff that I didn't have fit into the script. Purple Fire's relation to Sleep, Death, and Miquella. Oh, right. Sleep, Death, the St. Trina's Flames. Yeah, that was a lot of the stuff that I cut. The whole aspect of sleep as it pertains to life and death and working as kind of like a middle ground. Miquella's bewitching branches being bloodstained. So that's kind of covered a little bit with the way that Melena's golden needle was repaired with blood as well. So using blood to circumvent somebody else's will was kind of a thing that I wanted to explore, but I couldn't find a good way to fit it into the script. Blood becoming glintstone? Oh, right, because the Albinaurics stuff. Yeah, he does have bloody glintstone in a way. Does blood become glintstone? Maybe also because of the sacrifices on the Thorcerer's staves, which I can't remember what they're called. Silver items used to reflect light, gold. So silver used to reflect light. So I'm thinking of the mirror helms, I'm guessing.
So was silver used to reflect? And could that be why it's night-coded as well? Maybe. Was Ranni only active or alive at night? Oh, yeah. I think, no, you can talk to her during the day in the towers, but she does go to sleep sometimes, which is very weird to me because, like, from what I understand, dolls and puppets don't really have the need to sleep because they're not really alive. Renala's moon coming from Will in cut content? Oh, yeah, that's actually a pretty cool one. So there's like some cut lines with Renala telling Ranni that her moon is her will, essentially, which is, fun. Oh, this is another thing that I didn't get to put in because it's kind of irrelevant to the video. But the possibility of the Erd Tree being a pyrophyte and thus needing fire to reproduce, which may or may not tie into the way that Melina is burned and whatnot. So, yeah. Burn the Erd Tree to get Erd Tree seeds to make an Erd Tree, I guess. Maybe. And then I wonder if that's true, how that interact with the Elden Ring. I guess we don't need fire to reproduce the Elden Ring, but nor does Ranni. Anyway, land octopi needing human blood for reproduction. Oh, right. I didn't bring that up in the video. Oh, wow. Okay. So, with blood containing gold in beast blood and whatnot, and land octopi being described as a bloodless creature, and all the bloodless creatures being carnivorous, I'm assuming that they consume the will from other things to sustain themselves, because we're told that land octopi need human blood for their land octopi ovaries in order to reproduce. So that is another reason why I thought the spirit was separate from the will. And then, of course, we can tie that idea potentially back into the glintstone fireflies and the silver fireflies and the gold ones. So let me think about that. I guess we don't know what happens to the octopi after they reproduce. They seem to still be around. Anyway, memories ties to gold. Renowned spirit ashes have more memory. Oh, okay. So yeah, talking about spirit ashes in general throughout the video and ashes of war and their ties to memory, that's kind of reinforced in that renowned spirit ashes are renowned by the virtue of having more memory, and renowned, like, essentially meaning more of a name after they die. So they remember more of their name, which is why they have more renown and more memory. It's tied together, essentially. Sleep, the scarlet rot erodes memory. So Millicent tells us that the scarlet rot eroded her memory, or maybe it's Gowrie. And he says, like, Millicent doesn't need to remember him when she leaves, something along those lines. I think there might also be something with the Millennia and Scarlet Rot eroding the memory. Anyway, sleep. Oh, right. Because the Rayalukarian children, the, not preceptors, the juvenile scholars go to sleep, and through sleep, the memory fades into oblivion. So, right, I forgot. Yeah, I did not get a good angle to bring this into the video. So, this might tie into Placidusax as well in the in a roundabout way. In that, if sleep allows one to forget things and you need will to awaken from sleep, then sleeping might erode memory with what description is it? I should just look up Oblivion, not Skyrim. Cap won by students of the Rayalukari Academy. Rebirth is as sleep to them, and with each awakening, memory fades into oblivion. So I think a prerequisite to being reborn is to have one's memory fade into oblivion, which might tie into the way that the Tarnished can have a perfect rebirth, because they're kind of like the somber smithing stone type situation where their memory isn't tied to their being, perhaps because they've been tarnished. Maybe. Sleep's ties to rebirth. Okay, I just kind of covered that. Pokemon, Heart Gold, Soul Silver. Oh yeah, so is the heart related to gold and thus the soul related to silver? I don't know. So that's why I had the big old question mark, etc. So those are some of the things that I thought about trying to include into the script, but it just became a little bit too unwieldy, and quite frankly, the script already seemed long enough as it was, with it being a video that's over an hour long. Without horns, you wonder if land octopi thing also means that Albinaurics also need blood to be made. Oh yeah, I would definitely agree with that, because although the Albinauric spirit ashes don't require blood, because I think the Albinaurics came from silver tears that absorbed runes of some sort to become Albinaurics, it should be worth noting that in order to summon the silver tier, you actually need HP to cast it as opposed to FP, and of course HP is kind of very explicitly related to blood in this game. So phew, that was quite a long video, guys. If you guys have any questions or want me to cover some things about it, by all means feel free. Otherwise, we'll just kind of finish the rest of the video, and then I'll probably close out the stream after that. I agree with everything I've said, but I hope what I've shared for now is enjoyable and cohesive enough to help shape future discourse surrounding the game. I try to be very clear about what's fact versus what's opinion, so if you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like and subscribe. If you guys have any questions or comments, let me know down below, and if you want to discuss more lore, feel free to join the Discord server. The link is in the video description. I'd like to thank all my patrons, viewers, commenters, and channel members for your continued support. It makes working on these kinds of projects more enjoyable, and I look forward to producing more. Fear the old lore. Without Horns asks, not going to give the extra Miquella stuff I said at the start. So part of that is just related to... Wait, why is it not backing? Nani? Oh, wait. How did that... Oh, I must have accidentally clicked this instead of pausing. Ha, get wrecked me. I'm going to go ahead and link my own video to the chat if you guys want to give the creator of that video some support with a like or a sub to the channel. So yeah, some of the Miquella stuff was kind of what I didn't get to fit in at the end here, which I touched on. I could look back at my notes, but I don't think they're super cohesive beyond this. And I probably unwrote some of them for a reason. So let me look over here. Oh, this can't be the right page. What did I call it? Okay, found it. Oh my goodness. Okay. So just to give you guys a bit of a context. So the final version of the script was 24 pages, and like my drafts were 48 pages. So I don't even know what the word count would be. View word count? I don't even know how to look this up. Tools? So 21,559 words. Granted, some of this is duplicated from like one draft into another and just kind of doing revisions as I went along and then just bumping stuff down and out of the main part of the draft. So let me look up Miquella. Oh, I was talking about Miquella watering his tree with his own blood. Hold on. Not everything about blood is tied to the arcane and vice versa, but their connection's undeniable based on all the weapons and spells with arcane stat requirements. Then I was talking about a bunch of random stuff. Oh, and then I was tying that into the land octopi. Oh, okay. I see where I was going with this. So, without horns, part of the reason I was thinking about Miquella in the Albinaurics is that if the Erd Tree provides an avenue of rebirth that is closed off to the Albinaurics, maybe they decided to follow Miquella and the Halig Tree because sleep has some relation to rebirth or reawakening that the Erd Tree can't provide them. So that might be why they followed Miquella, because of some Saint Trina type connections. But I don't think we really have a lot to build off with that, unfortunately. And yeah, pretty much everything else is kind of relating to the idea of blood and bewitching branches. Hey, appreciate that, Methoda. Elden enthusiasts, you prefer first antagonist videos? Understandable. So, okay, folks, that will be it for tonight's stream. Thank you so much for watching me watch me. That was kind of an interesting experience. I'm quite pleased with the whole love enduring connection, because that ended up being a lot more prescient than I was expecting, because I thought that was one of the weaker parts of the video, or one of the... Yeah, I'm fine with saying weaker parts. So, okay, that'll be it for tonight's stream. I'll figure out what I want to watch tomorrow, and then I'll probably start getting back into playing some games on stream in the nearer future. So anyway, that'll be it for me for tonight. I want to thank you for joining as always, and hopefully I'll catch you on the next one at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, until then, take care, stay safe. Last Protagonist out.